Chapter 1336. Chapter 1336. The Fox Clan intervenes. Take that step. Yi Zichen rested his chin on his hand and fell silent. Han Nan didn't want to disturb him. Yi Zichen's understanding of transcendence had opened a whole new door. He stared at Han Nan in astonishment, his gaze lingering on the diagram he'd drawn and the stroke he'd just drawn. He hadn't guessed transcendence was like this. Based on Han Nan's diagram, transcendence was relatively easy. All he had to do was take a single step to the side and he'd succeeded. However, true transcendence wasn't that easy. So long as one was alive, they were bound by the laws. Transcendence required breaking the shackles of the laws. Rather than saying it was jumping out of the box, it was more accurate to say it was destroying the box and jumping out. How could breaking the laws be so easy? Wow, this really is. After a while, Yi Zichen leaned back in his chair and sighed. When Han Nan saw him sigh, he chuckled. In truth, I'm just giving you a simple description. I've never transcended before, so I'm not too sure. But what I'm sure of is that the prerequisite for transcendence is that being a ruler isn't a requirement. Then the problem is, how am I supposed to take that step? It's obviously not going to be easy, said Yi Zichen helplessly. In truth, it's both easy and difficult, said Han Nan. Just say it. Steel Celestial Fate. The nine-tailed fox clan of the Yao realm. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed in the tranquil forest. Countless little foxes, who had yet to take human form, rested here. They leisurely frolicked in the forest, not having to worry about any natural enemies or any existences that could be dangerous to them. Here they could live a carefree childhood. Because this was where the Fox Empress lived. In front of a bamboo house, Su Qingyan smiled faintly as she watched the little foxes play in the forest. This could be considered the only joy she had left in life. She'd long since reached the peak of the ruler realm, but hadn't taken a single step forward in tens of thousands of years. After tens of thousands of years, she understood that she probably couldn't take that final step. The only thing she could do was to intimidate the other races while she was alive so that they wouldn't dare to harbor any ill intentions towards the Fox clan. The rest of the time, she could only watch the newborn members of the Fox clan and feel gratified as she watched the clan grow stronger day by day. Lil Wan, it's about time. Go. Su Qingyan smiled faintly, then a beautiful woman walked out of the bamboo building. She was none other than Su Qingyan, the current head of the Fox clan, Su Wan. Sis, if I were to go over, I would be completely falling out with them. It would also mean that we would have to stand on Zhou Wu's side. Are you sure you want to do that? Su Wan frowned at Su Qingyan, her eyes filled with hesitation. The nine-tailed fox clan had always maintained absolute neutrality like the four sacred clans. But this time, if she went over, it meant that they had to choose side. Who said anything about standing on Zhou Wu's side? If I ask you to stand, will you stand? Su Qingyan's eyes flashed with a cold light, and Su Wan clenched her fists. She would rather die than stand on Zhou Wu's side. If it wasn't for him, how could Wu Xing have died? After Wu Xing's death, Su Qingyan had passed on her position. From that moment on, Su Wan swore that the nine-tailed fox clan would never coexist with God Emperor Zhou Wu. Sis, then what do we do? Xiao Hu isn't a member of the Xiao family. The Xiao family is Zhou Wu's dog. If we go save him, what's the difference between that and standing on Zhou Wu's side? Su Wan didn't understand. The profound pavilion is also Zhou Wu's people, but is Xianji his dog? Asked Su Qingyan. Of course not. Xianji isn't like them, said Su Wan confidently. Then that's it. Xianji just sent me a transmission telling you to go save Xiao Hu. As for why, she didn't say, but she did say that she'd come to us in the next few days. I understand. Su Wan nodded, then transformed into a beam of white light and disappeared from the bamboo building. Su Qingyan was left alone, staring at the distant stone wall. Wu Xing, you've been arrogant your entire life, but you died in such a sullen manner. Don't worry, my little sister and I will soon avenge you. As for your celestial fate, just think of it as a gift for that youth. Mayer really liked him. Just think of it as a greeting gift for your son-in-law. As she spoke, flames flickered through Su Qingyan's eyes. Gu Li's soul body vanished from the cave once more, but the shock he'd left behind was hard to conceal. He could transcend any realm, so long as he could take that final step. Kuei Lin sat in front of the bonfire and couldn't help but sigh. He was still hesitating, wondering if he should let Enlu go. As long as he obtained the God Emperor's celestial fate and Enlu's heavenly demon soul body, then he really would have a chance. Forget it. After a few moments of hesitation, the demon emperor seemed to have aged a few decades. A few strands of silver had appeared in his dark purple hair. In the end, he gave up. Rather than fight for that slim chance, it was better to choose a more reliable method. As he made his decision, a bitter smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He'd hesitated far too much. He was no longer willing to take risk. Had he really grown old? He smiled bitterly at his own face, illuminated by the flames, then rose to his feet. As soon as he moved, everyone's gazes converged on him. When he saw their expressions, he smiled calmly. You don't need to look at me like that. I'll let her go. The demon emperor is righteous. The major powers couldn't help but bow respectfully. Since the demon emperor had made this decision, they'd formed a connection with the Master of the Stars. All they had to do now was help the Master of the Stars transcend. When he heard their sighs of admiration, the demon emperor couldn't bring himself to smile. What a bunch of selfish bastards. After a brief, bitter smile, Kuei Lin composed himself and resumed his usual dignified demeanor. Everyone, go back. Since Gu Li was able to find this place without anyone noticing, he'll naturally come looking for me at the Demon Emperor's palace in 3 days. Once we're done talking, I'll notify you. When the time comes, it'll be a battle for transcendence. When they heard this, they nodded. Then, their gazes fell on Xiao Hu, who was lying on the ground, then glanced at Xiao Ting. Emperor Xiao, this person is a member of your clan. What do you think we should do with him? He's heard too much, said Kuei Lin. Furthermore, he doesn't look like one of us. I suggest we kill him. But since he's one of your people, you can deal with him. We won't interfere, said Kuei Lin. Xiao Hu's expression froze. He raised his head and looked at Xiao Ting. He'd served the Xiao family all his life. Could it be? Xiao Hu, the Xiao family will treat your family well. Xiao Ting didn't hesitate at all. A small lightning dragon appeared in his palm. However, the instant his palm descended, a beam of white light appeared by his side. Everyone in the cave attacked at the same time, but the white light only lasted for a moment. Xiao Hu, who'd been lying on the ground, vanished. Su Wan. Kuei Lin's eyes widened, then he frowned in the direction Xiao Hu had disappeared. Everyone, he growled, there's no need to delay. Return to your clans as soon as possible. It seems we'll need to bring forward the follow-up plan. Demon Emperor, can you tell us what our main objective is? Chapter 1337. An honored guest. The bamboo forest was verdant, and the bamboo leaves rustled in the wind. Su Qingyan had escorted the little fox, who'd been frolicking in the forest, somewhere else. In a moment she'd be receiving an honored guest. Incense candles burned on the bamboo table in front of the bamboo house, filling the entire forest with their fragrance. Su Qingyan sat cross-legged on the ground, her eyes downcast. She quietly listened to the stream flowing in front of the bamboo house. Accompanied by a crisp, dong sound, she opened her eyes, a mellow smile on her lips, and stood up from the ground to look at the path in the bamboo forest. Not long after, the sound of steady footsteps could be heard in the bamboo forest. The one who walked out was a young man with a crown on his head. His eyes were sharp and fierce, and faint arcs of lightning crackled around him. He radiated an aura of righteousness. When he emerged from the bamboo forest, he stopped. The young man stared deeply at Su Qingyan, then pulled out a piece of green bamboo and tossed it to her. This green bamboo belongs to your fox clan, doesn't it? Su Qingyan smiled faintly and caught the bamboo, then nodded noncommittally. She pointed at the bamboo table and gestured for him to sit. The young man's expression was still cold and arrogant. He clasped his hands behind his back, walked up to the table, and sat down. What business do you have with me? Empress of the Foxes, you should know that my Shao family has never been on good terms with the Yao realm. Although we don't have any enmity with you foxes, at a time like this, as the Shao family's new Thunder Emperor, it's inevitable that people will gossip about me if I stay here for too long. The young man before her was none other than the Shao family's new Thunder Emperor, Shao Yan. After all these years of tempering, he'd gradually shed his former indecisiveness. His imposing aura now resembled that of the Shao family's Thunder Emperor. Naturally, I called you here because I have something to say. In the face of Shao Yan's intense gaze, Su Qingyan simply smiled. Her smile was as alluring as a snow lotus blooming for the first time, causing all flowers to dim in comparison. However, Shao Yan wasn't affected in the slightest. He knew full well. The female empress of the Fox clan was indeed a delicate and beautiful flower. However, this flower's beauty was dyed in blood. Shao Yan coldly ignored her smile and narrowed his eyes. In that case, let's just say it. Our Shao family still has a lot of official matters to deal with, so we can't chat with the Empress for too long. I know your Shao family is busy. You're in control of the lightning tribulation of all races. Naturally, a small clan like the Fox clan can't compare to you. But Emperor Shao Yan, your Shao family will soon be even busier. What do you mean? Shao Yan frowned. You can at least have an hour, right? Please don't be impatient. After an hour, even if I let you go, you might not want to go for a while. Shao Yan could naturally tell that Su Qingyan was implying something. He squinted at the Empress for a long time but didn't reject her. They just sat on the ground and didn't communicate with each other for an hour. When the time was up, Shao Yan immediately called out, "Empress!" "Shu." He raised his finger and placed it on his lip. Then, he saw a ray of white light piercing through the air. It was Su Wan who had been sent out. Beside her was a pale-faced Shao Hu. "Sister." Su Wan walked straight to Su Qingyan's side. At that moment, Shao Yan saw Shao Hu. "Shao Hu, why are you here at the Fox clan?" "Clan head." Shao Hu's eyes widened. Shao Ting's attack had heavily injured him. He clutched his chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Su Qingyan furrowed her brows. She tossed a handkerchief into the air and caught the blood. Not a single drop fell to the ground. "We can't afford to see blood here. Wan didn't you treat his wounds before coming here? I gave him a healing pill, but it doesn't seem to have any effect. Thankfully, his life is hanging by a thread. As for whether or not he'll live, let the Shao family save him themselves." "What does this have to do with the Fox clan?" said Su Wan. When he saw Shao Hu's injuries, Shao Yan thought the Fox clan had done it. But now that he heard it, it seemed things weren't as he'd imagined. Shao Yan took a healing pill from his spatial ring and stuffed it into Shao Hu's mouth. Then, he used his divine power to guide the pill. Another 15 minutes passed. Shao Hu's pale face flushed red. Shao Yan furrowed his brows and said, "Shao Hu, what on earth is going on? Didn't you just tell me the old emperor was looking for you? From the looks of it, your injuries were caused by a lightning attribute cultivation technique." Shao Hu gnashed his teeth. He wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Then, he clenched his fists tightly. It was the old emperor. Shao Yan's pupils constricted and his eyes filled with shock. Su Qingyan shot Su Wan a meaningful glance. Immediately, Su Wan said, "Don't worry." Then, Su Wan said, "Your family's old emperor joined forces with demons and a few Yao traitors. Back then, your old emperor tried to kill him. If I hadn't gone to save him, Impossible." Xiao Yin glared at her and berated her. Su Wan smiled and said nothing else. Then, Xiao Yin grabbed Xiao Hu by the shoulder. Tell me, what on earth happened? Why did the old emperor hurt you? Tell me. Family head Su, I'm telling the truth. Not only that, but the old emperor also told the demon emperor and the others about what I discovered in the outside, as well as the Xiao family's secrets. Family head, the old emperor, might really have betrayed us. With that, Xiao Hu buried his head in his hands. Xiao Yan, who was holding on to Xiao Hu's shoulder, felt his legs go weak and he stumbled back a step. He kept swallowing his saliva as Su Wan and Xiao Hu's words kept echoing in his mind. His father really had joined forces with the demons. During the past 100 years, Xiao Ting's behavior had become particularly strange. Xiao Yan had privately investigated the identity of the person who'd always appeared by Xiao Ting's side. At the time, he'd come to the conclusion that it was a demon. He'd gone to talk to Xiao Ting, but all he'd gotten in return was a torrent of abuse. Xiao Ting had even warned him to just mind his own business. Until now, Xiao Hu had been gravely injured, and he'd given a definite answer. Xiao Yin could choose not to believe the words of the Fox clansman. But Xiao Hu, who'd spent his entire life serving the Xiao family and had long since given his life to them, had no choice but to believe him. How could this be? Xiao Yin couldn't believe it. Little did he know, Xiao Hu felt the same way. He'd never forget Xiao Ting's decisiveness when he tried to kill him. Xiao Ting's lightning-covered hand had come crashing down on him without the slightest hesitation. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out why the old emperor had become like that. If Su Wan hadn't arrived so suddenly, he might have already died in the river Styx. Never mind Xiao Yan. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, heard the conversation between the old emperor and the demons, and revealed every secret of the Xiao family, he wouldn't have believed it. He wouldn't have believed it either. You shouldn't just hang around here. Hurry back to the clan and take a look. Once you've taken care of the Xiao family's affairs, the Fox clan will always welcome you back. Su Qingyan's lips curled into a faint smile. At that moment, Xiao Yan took out a jade slip. Chapter 1338. Dethronement. It seems the news has arrived. Am I right? When she saw Xiao Yan's expression change, a smile tugged at Su Qingyan's lips. A piece of jade bamboo appeared in her palm. Then I'll be a good person to the end. I'll send you back. The bamboo landed on the ground. Instantly, a forest of jade bamboo sprouted beneath Xiao Yan and Xiao Hu's feet. The bamboo grew wildly, piercing through the void. The two of them rode the bamboo and disappeared from the Fox clan. After disappearing, a sharp glint flashed through Su Qingyan's eyes. Send people to the central divine mountain to secretly protect Lu Mei and Lil Yan. I already sent them a few days ago, said Su Wan, nodding. I've also sent people to pick up Su Zhu. That's for the best. Su Qingyan nodded, then narrowed her eyes. Open the Fox clan's gates. From now on, we'll welcome anyone who wishes to visit our clan. With that, Su Qingyan lost her usual gentleness. Her eyes turned fiery red, and her 9 flaming tails swayed gently. Clan head, we're here. Riding Su Qingyan's bamboo, Xiao Yan and Xiao Hu passed through the air above the central divine mountain in the blink of an eye. They landed firmly on the ground. As they did, the bamboo forest transformed into a piece of jade bamboo and flew into Xiao Yan's hand. The Fox Empress truly is unfathomable. Just this move of hers was enough to suppress countless ruler-rank experts. Xiao Yan clenched the bamboo tightly in his arms. When he thought of the Xiao family's current predicament, his brows narrowed. Return to the clan. Ever since the old emperor abdicated and passed his position to Xiao Yan, Xiao Ting had begun to live a leisurely life. He rarely interfered with the clan's affairs. Practically everyone in the clan believed the old emperor would relinquish his authority, but not long ago, he returned. Not only did he return, but he also summoned all of the clan's higher-ups, including the heads of the various subordinate clans. At the same time, he made an announcement. He removed Emperor Xiao Yan from his position as clan head. From now on, the Xiao family would be under his control. This sudden decision was the same as when Xiao Ting had passed his position to Xiao Yan all those years ago. There'd been no warning at all. The clansmen present at the scene, as well as the vassal families of the Xiao family, who heard the news, found it hard to digest this sudden change. However, for those small families, it didn't matter who the patriarch was. As long as the Xiao family was still the Xiao family, the number one family below the God Emperor, the Lightning Emperor's family that controlled the lightning of all races, that was enough. However, it was different for the higher-ups or the larger clans attached to the Xiao family. A new ruler brings his own courtiers. Although Xiao Ting and Xiao Yan were father and son, and after Xiao Ting's abdication, Xiao Yan should have inherited everything he had, that wasn't the case. Xiao Ting and Xiao Yan were father and son. Their management policies and political views were absolutely at odds with each other. Not too long ago, the Xiao family had suffered a major setback. Back then, Xiao Ting had chased the Xiao family's eldest daughter out of the family. Back then, many other families had supported her, but Xiao Yan and the eldest daughter of the Xiao family were very close. After he took office, the first thing he did was to deal with those who hid him when he was down. He had greatly reduced the influence of those people, and in the past 100 years, he had replaced those positions with his own trusted aide. Some clans were once Xiao Ting's favorites, while others were Xiao Yan's. A change in the family head would directly affect the influence of their clans and individuals. Furthermore, many of the clans that had once supported Xiao Ting, for the sake of their clan's future development, had deliberately aligned themselves with Xiao Yan. As a result, they'd offended quite a few stewards and members of other clans. As a result, as soon as the news spread, some of the clans that had supported Xiao Yan contacted him. They wanted him to make an appearance as soon as possible. No matter what the result was, they needed him to be present. However, due to the recent suppression, those who had once supported Xiao Ting had already stepped forward. It seemed as if the position of family head would really be reclaimed by Xiao Ting. "All of you, get out of my way!" With an angry shout, a path appeared in the Xiao clan's bustling meeting hall. Xiao, who stood by Xiao Yan's side, accompanied by a youth carrying an ancient tome. They walked into the center of the hall from outside. Xiao Ting was currently sitting in the family head seat, giving orders to the clan. When he saw Xiao Yan approach, especially Xiao Hu, his gaze clearly froze. Xiao Yan saw this, and it confirmed what he'd heard in the Fox clan. "Father, I never would have guessed you'd really betray us." Xiao Yan took a deep breath, then lowered his head. What he'd just said was just a whisper to himself. He couldn't possibly reveal it in front of so many people. As his son, he didn't want Xiao Yan to bear the infamy of being a traitor in his later years. He also didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble at a time like this. It would be best if he could resolve this matter while reducing the attention to the minimum. His eyes flashed with regret and pain. As everyone watched, Xiao Yan slowly walked up to Xiao Ting and bowed deeply. "Father! You're here." Xiao Ting had been an emperor for half his life, so it went without saying that he'd held a lofty position for so long. That indifferent glance was enough to make people feel a strong sense of oppression. Xiao Yan's meticulous greeting made the onlookers vaguely sense the hostility between father and son. "It seems you've done well as an emperor for 100 years. At the very least, you've raised a group of loyal subordinates. As a father, I'm very gratified. Before, I thought you weren't cut out for this job. I even regretted how I'd given birth to a son like you. Now, it seems you've done well." In the past, Xiao Yan would have beamed with delight if he received such praise from Xiao Ting. But at this moment, there was only indifference on his face. "Not bad. You've really improved a lot," said Xiao Ting, nodding. "Since you're back, you must know everything. I know you've worked hard to manage the Xiao family for 100 years, but from now on, you're no longer the head of the family. You've been deposed. hand over the family head's golden seal. His tone was indifferent, but there was no room for doubt. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ting glanced meaningfully at the people around him and waved his hand. Immediately, 2 elders of the Xiao family stepped forward and extended their hands. Xiao Ting, seated in the family head seat, gently rapped the table, indicating for his son to obediently hand over the golden seal. Xiao Yan still didn't hand it over. Father and son just stared at each other. Everyone in the hall could sense the tension in the air. Xiao Ting smiled as they stared at each other. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to Xiao Hu. Take down Xiao Hu. The onlookers didn't know what was going on, but the members of the discipline hall still stepped forward. Who dares? Xiao Yan, who'd been silent all this time, roared. He glared viciously at the members of the discipline hall, who were about to attack. Chapter 1339. Horizontal Vertical in Outer Space. As his voice fell, Han Nan's gaze turned sharp. His gaze was like a sharp blade that had been unsheathed, staring straight ahead, shaking people's souls. In particular, when he said, "Steel," Yi Zichen could vaguely sense that the Third Era was about to unleash a storm of carnage. As long as there was a need to fight for it, no one would be stupid enough to obediently hand over their star fate. Especially that Gu Li. He was one of the 2 emperors chosen by heaven. Since he needed to steal celestial fate, he had to fight Gu Li. Yi Zichen and Gu Li were old rivals. Based on his understanding of Gu Li, Yi Zichen knew that Gu Li was definitely fully prepared and waiting for him to arrive. It was more likely that he was already preparing to take the initiative to attack him. As Yi Zichen muttered to himself, Han Nan didn't stop talking. The Third Era is coming to an end. When the time comes, we can take advantage of the chaos in the 3 realms to strike. What you need to do is to obtain all the celestial fate of the 2 emperors chosen by heaven. Not only that, but you also cannot let go of God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate. God Emperor Zhou Wu? Yi Zichen arched his brows. Transcendence requires complete Emperor celestial fate. Although God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate belongs to the 5 elements Great Emperor, it's still Emperor celestial fate. I can't determine if his celestial fate belongs to the celestial fate you've manifested this time, but it's better to nip it in the bud. His celestial fate must also be taken. Besides, this celestial fate doesn't belong to him in the first place. He's just a despicable person who's trying to steal the celestial fate. It was obvious that Han Nan had a very bad impression of people who tried to usurp the celestial fate. At first, he had been disdainful of his evaluation of Zhou Wu, but now, he had labeled him as a vile person. How would Zhou Wu feel if he knew that a god emperor of a generation was being slandered behind his back? However, this was exactly what Yi Zichen wanted. He'd already been tainted by the 5 elements Great Emperor's karma, so he was bound to run into the God Emperor. If the outer realms interfered, then everything would become a lot clearer. Moreover, if they could take the God Emperor's celestial fate, they could avenge the 5 elements Great Emperor. But I have to remind you, seizing the fate of the stars is a long-term plan. It can't be accomplished overnight. We want to usurp their celestial fate, so they will definitely think of usurping yours. Yi Zichen's expression froze. He knew Han Nan was telling the truth. In such a situation, all living beings sought to transcend. However, Yi Zichen had always found it strange. Even with Gu Zichen's support and the help of countless nobles, he was only on par with Gu Li. What was going on with this guy? Could it be that there was an old monster standing behind him? Senior, I've disappointed you. Gu Li knelt on the ground, his head lowered. A soul floated in front of him. If you looked closely, you'd see that this soul bore a 70% resemblance to Gu Li. The only difference between the two was that this person was considerably older than Gu Li. The elderly soul on the chair sighed in disappointment. His sunken eye sockets and protruding cheekbones showed that this old man was definitely not an upright person when he was alive. But when he looked at Gu Li, he simply sighed. His expression was as if he had accepted his fate, and he kept shaking his head. I told you not to get involved with Kuei Lin and the others. Why didn't you listen? Gu Li knelt on the ground and looked at the sorrowful old man. He gnashed his teeth. He could treat everyone with disdain, and he could show his most sinister and cunning side. But in front of this old man, he treated himself like a junior and treated him like a senior. He didn't want to see the old man sigh. Gu Li would feel pain if he sighed. Senior, Enlu is far too important to me. She's the woman I love the most. I can't just leave her be. I know. The old man sighed, but didn't seem to blame Gu Li too much. Perhaps this is our fate. I thought that by following you and leading the way, I could change your fate. I never would have guessed that Enlu would still run into it. He seemed to understand Gu Li's feelings. It was as if he'd done his best for her. 129,600,000 years is a reincarnation cycle. Everything that happened in this era will be completely replayed after that. I didn't believe it, but now, I do. Senior, perhaps we really aren't fated to transcend. Everything was predestined long ago. From the day you met Enlu, your fate was decided. Senior, you cherish the time you have with Enlu. With a deep sigh, the old man's soul drifted into the depths of the demon cavern. Gu Li knelt for another hour or so, then gnashed his teeth, bowed deeply, and left. Not long after he left, the old man's soul floated back out. He gently stroked the smooth walls. Back then, in order to avenge you, I handed over my celestial fate to someone else. In order to resurrect you, I snatched back the celestial fate I'd given him. He died. You didn't live. I died too. I became a sinner of the era's transcendence, but I couldn't accept it. I found me, but I made the same mistake again. Now, my only hope is that this stone wall won't leave behind your final words. As soon as this thought appeared in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness, it lingered. It was not impossible. Otherwise, how could Gu Li always have the upper hand? What's more, how could he know so much that Yi Zichen didn't? Yi Zichen asked himself. Although he couldn't compare to Einstein in terms of intelligence, he was still within the range of a normal person. There was no reason for Gu Li to know so much more than him. Everything was truly terrifying when one thought about it. It was highly likely that some old monster stood behind Gu Li, and that monster was at least on Gu Zichen's level. Could it be that the old man behind Gu Li was the same as Gu Zichen? He'd crossed over from a parallel dimension and found this Gu Li? But according to Gu Zichen, the people of his parallel world were all dead. Then vertically? Gu Zichen had traveled horizontally to find Yi Zichen. In that case, could he have traveled vertically to find Gu Li? After arriving in the outside, Yi Zichen saw that everything here was exactly the same as in the modern realm. The only difference was that the modern realm hadn't transcended. This was the outside, where everyone revered martial prowess. If the modern realm also transcended, would it become like the outer realm now? Moreover, he could see that the people here were no different from those in the modern realm. Their appearance, their temperament, the location of the buildings, the names of the streets. Uncle Han. As he considered this, Yi Zichen's expression grew unsightly. He stared at Han Nan, his eyes devoid of life. When Han Nan heard his voice, he arched his brows. "What is it?" "I'd like to ask you a question." "Speak." Chapter 1340. Golden Bodyguard Pu Jingwan. When he asked this question, Han Nan's expression froze for a long time before he relaxed a little. Then he crossed his fingers, pressed his elbows against the table, and smiled. "Why do you suddenly ask this question?" In truth, Yi Zichen regretted asking this question. He was afraid that if Han Nan mentioned the possibility, his worldview would completely collapse. But he still had an unshakable thirst for knowledge. Furthermore, he'd already considered the worst possibility. "I want to know." Under Yi Zichen's resolute gaze, Han Nan nodded in understanding. "Reincarnation." Yi Zichen's scalp instantly went numb. His entire body trembled as if he'd contracted malaria. Han Nan laughed. Although we call it an era, it's actually just a cycle of reincarnation. The first master of the stars once calculated that everything in the world would reappear after 129,600,000 years. In other words, after 129,600,000 years, the same person will be in the same place, doing the same thing. The reappearance you speak of should be the reappearance of the outside's reincarnation cycle. Do you understand now? A new cycle of reincarnation. Yi Zichen pushed aside his chair and ran to the window. He took deep breaths and occasionally retched. When he heard this news, he felt as if someone had viciously squeezed his heart. He felt like it was about to explode. The pressure he felt instantly reached its peak. Yang Jian wanted to step forward, but Han Nan stopped him. Some things required Yi Zichen to accept. When he first found out, he might find it hard to believe, but Han Nan trusted that Yi Zichen would come out of it. As for why, he didn't want to tell him. After retching for a while, Yi Zichen's eyes were bloodshot as he supported himself against the window. The veins on his neck and forehead bulged. He clenched his fists and wiped his lips. I want to see your era's minister of the left. I'm sorry, but you can't see the minister of the left, at least not yet. Han Nan chuckled and shook his head. Then I want to know his name. I'm sorry. Han Nan was still smiling apologetically. Yi Zichen slammed his hands down on the table, then glared at Han Nan with bloodshot eyes. His entire body radiated a vicious aura. Yang Jian quickly grabbed him. At that moment, Yi Zichen smiled. Ha 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 ha. He seemed to be laughing and crying at the same time. He sat on the chair and looked up at the sky. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they did not fall. Please calm down. When the time is right, you will naturally be able to meet the minister of the left. Our main problem now is to help you obtain the celestial fate and transcend. Let your era and our era as well. If I bring you along, wouldn't this world really be in chaos? Suddenly, a mocking smile flashed across Yi Zichen's lips, and his bloodshot eyes flashed with a strange light. Han Nan froze, but Yi Zichen's smile faded. It's fine. You guys do your own things, and we'll do ours. No one will hold anyone back. At that moment, it was as if Yi Zichen had become a completely different person. He leaned against the back of the chair, tilted his head, and tapped the table with his fingers. How are you going to help me? Although he sensed that Yi Zichen had changed so much that it was like he was a completely different person from before, now that they were on the right track, Han Nan put on a serious expression. Since your celestial fate cannot be usurped, we will absolutely guarantee your safety. Han Nan picked up the phone on his desk. Let him in. Not long after, the office door was pushed open, and a beautifully dressed woman walked in. It's her. When he saw the newcomers, Yang Jian froze momentarily. Yi Zichen arched his brows and patted his pockets. Pu Jingwan. It was none other than Pu Jingwan, who'd hit on Yi Zichen on the side of the road. She'd even left Yi Zichen her contact information. Handsome guy in ancient costume, we are really fated. Pu Jingwan walked in and smiled. She nodded slightly to Yang Jian, then walked over to her desk and pulled out a document from her pocket. Hello, I'm Pu Jingwan. Pu Jingwan put away her documents, then sat down at her desk and looked at Yi Zichen. Don't tell me the target of my mission this time is this handsome guy in ancient costume? It really is the will of the heavens. Yi Zichen's eyes flashed with indescribable light as he looked at Han Nan. When he sensed his gaze, Han Nan smiled bitterly. This is Miss Pu Jingwan. She's the bodyguard we've arranged for you. You're already acquainted with Yang Jian, so he'll stay by your side to ensure your safety. In the modern realm, Pu Jingwan was just a streamer. Yi Zichen hadn't felt her combat prowess to begin with. Handsome guy in ancient costume, why are you looking at me like that? Take a good look at my document. I'm an ace bounty hunter. Ever since I debuted, I've accepted over 10,000 missions, and I've never made a single mistake. So long as I have enough bargaining chips, I'm invincible. This was quite a contrast to the modern realm's Pu Jingwan. Yi Zichen rubbed his nose. Can I switch out? Whenever he saw this Pu Jingwan, he couldn't help but think of the modern realm's Pu Jingwan. Yi Zichen felt strange asking her to protect him. No. Han Nan cut Yi Zichen off, then lowered his voice and said, I paid a fortune to find her for you. She's beautiful, has a good figure, and has a high cultivation. I followed Yang Jian's instructions and found her based on your preferences. If you want a refund, you'll have to pay me back. Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at Yang Jian. Isn't that good? Bro, don't be so picky, said Yang Jian. Pu Jingwan sighed, speechless. Suddenly, she pulled her collar down, put her hand on Yi Zichen's shoulder, and pressed her body against his. Handsome guy in ancient costume, don't tell me you haven't taken a fancy to her? Yi Zichen's heart shuddered involuntarily when he saw a sea of white. He hadn't expected Pu Jingwan to be so sexy. How come he hadn't noticed her back in the modern realm? Ahem. Yi Zichen cleared his throat. Now wasn't the time to pay attention to such things, so he hurriedly looked away and nodded. All right, I'll keep her, but that's not enough. I need you to provide me with 20 rulers. I need them to establish a faction in the God realm. Sure. I need more resources. Sure. I want more. So long as you need it, the outside has it. We'll give it to you without limit. Even though Yi Zichen was demanding an exorbitant price, and even the God Emperor would feel like his life depended on it, Han Nan didn't so much as bat an eyelid. Chapter 1341. Departure. Yi Zichen left the office building. When he reached Han Nan's residence, all of Yi Zichen's conditions were met. Resources. Manpower. Including the outsider's special envoy medallion. He'd obtained them all. However, this endless satisfaction only increased the pressure on Yi Zichen's shoulders several times over. Transcendence. All he had to do, was transcend before the end of the era. If he failed, then once the barrier the Master of the Stars left behind shattered, they'd be destroyed. The outsiders had staked their entire lives on Yi Zichen. At this point, they had no other choice. Even though Yi Zichen had received so many benefits, he didn't smile in the slightest. This burden weighed down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. After leaving the building, Yi Zichen stood motionless on the side of the street. The 20 rulers Han Nan had promised to send him stood around him. It's worth mentioning that Pu Jingwan had hand-picked these rulers. They'd last at least 10 rounds against her. This gave Yi Zichen a first-hand understanding of Pu Jingwan's power. She didn't even need to use her domain to defeat most rulers. She wasn't just extraordinarily beautiful, her strength was astonishing too. Even Yang Jian gasped, then slyly whispered into Yi Zichen's ear, "You can't just touch her." Dozens of people surrounded Yi Zichen, protecting him in the middle. Passers-by naturally glanced in his direction. Just whose family's young master was this? He'd put on such a show. When they saw Pu Jingwan, quite a few men secretly clenched their fists. They glanced at the rulers behind Yi Zichen and thought to themselves, all the good cabbages go to the pigs. Handsome guy in ancient costumes, what exactly do? You even know an official? Pu Jingwan's eyes flashed with curiosity as she approached. As she neared, Yi Zichen caught a whiff of her alluring fragrance. This made it impossible for him to immerse himself in his own inner world. Just now, you demanded an exorbitant price, but that official didn't even bat an eyelid. Those officials are usually stingy, and when they give us the Bounty Association's bounty, they make all sorts of excuses. But this time, the reward was given to me by the officials, and it was quite a lot of money. Pu Jingwan looked like a money grubber. Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head inwardly. The difference was just too great. The Pu Jingwan of the modern realm wasn't nearly as greedy as this one. It seemed that although it was a reincarnation, apart from their appearances, their personalities were really not the same. Yi Zichen wasn't in a good mood, so he didn't say anything. He merely glanced at her, then ignored her. Pu Jingwan pursed her lips and looked him up and down. "You're really aloof, but I like aloof people. Now that you're my employer, I should at least know your name, right?" "Yi Zichen," said Yi Zichen. "This name is not bad." Pu Jingwan giggled and nodded, but she didn't say what was so good about him. It was clear that she was just being polite, so Yi Zichen didn't take it to heart. However, Pu Jingwan seemed to be trying to start a conversation. "Aren't you going to ask for my name?" In response, it wasn't just Yi Zichen. Even Yang Jian looked at her speechlessly. When she saw their gazes, Pu Jingwan rubbed her nose, then pursed her lips. She didn't want to invite a rebuff, so she changed the subject. "So, where are we going now?" "Didn't you ask when you accepted the mission?" asked Yi Zichen. "I really didn't ask. I just saw that they offered a lot of money, so I agreed right away. Besides, what mission could possibly be too difficult for me? So long as I'm paid, I can even kill the primordial beasts outside the barrier." Pu Jingwan patted her chest confidently. Yang Jian secretly glanced at her and gulped. Yi Zichen, on the other hand, smiled calmly. "Are you sure?" This question stunned Pu Jingwan. Her confident expression twisted into one of astonishment. "You can't be serious, can you? You really are ruthless. You didn't even understand the mission before you agreed." Yi Zichen shook his head helplessly, then said nothing more. However, judging from Pu Jingwan's expression just now, this primordial beast from the Outlands truly was extraordinarily savage. If even she had such an expression on her face, if this beast were to attack his era, he had to transcend as soon as possible. Yi Zichen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Yang Jian. Only then did he realize that he was glancing at Pu Jingwan's breasts out of the corner of his eye. Every now and then, his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Yi Zichen elbowed him in the ribs. Yang Jian came to his senses in a panic, then wiped the corners of his mouth. "Let's go." Yi Zichen glared at him, but Yang Jian chuckled and nodded repeatedly. "Let's go, let's go." A pebble fell from Yang Jian's hand and landed on the ground. Instantly, a medium-sized black hole appeared in the street. When she saw this, Pu Jingwan's expression froze. She stood trembling on the street. "It can't be true, right?" She glared at him, but the 20 rulers behind Yi Zichen had already entered the black hole. "Are you going in or not? If you're not, then go back to whatever you were doing." With that, the two of them entered the black hole. Pu Jingwan remained on the street. She bit her lip and thought about how Yi Zichen hadn't reached the level of a diviner yet. "If you dare go in, what am I afraid of? I don't believe that group of giant beasts can eat me." As she entered, the black hole above the street also disappeared. When the pedestrians saw this, they all stopped in their tracks. They put their hands to their chests as if in prayer, then bowed deeply. Because they'd opened a black hole and left the safe zone. The only thing they could think of was to fight the beasts outside the quarantine zone. Did they all leave? Han Nan stood by the window and watched as Yi Zichen and the others left. At that moment, he heard a deep, mellow voice in the room. When he heard the voice, he turned around, saw the person sitting on his chair, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "They're all gone. As long as they're gone, that's good." The person smiled calmly. "Call Yin Shang and the others over. And Gu Li. Bring him back as well. Tell him I'm not dead. Tell him to come back. I can use what little celestial fate we have left to help him reform his soul and body. I can even help him revive Enlu. Don't let him cause trouble outside." "All right, but there's something I don't quite understand." "Speak. Why didn't you help Yi Zichen open his celestial eye? He still has celestial fate, but he doesn't know how to use it." "The time isn't right yet." The person smiled calmly. "Go do what you have to do." Chapter 1342. They had to take it the Lightning Emperor's estate while the Central Divine Mountain operated as usual. Outsiders had no idea that the Lightning Emperor's Shao family was currently facing a serious internal schism. Xiao Yan held the family head's golden seal and wore his imperial robes. Lightning crackled around him. His gaze was oppressive as he stared at the restless people around him. If anyone dares touch me, I'll use my position as family head to expel them from the Lightning Emperor's clan. Under this intimidating aura, no one in the hall dared to act rashly. Although Xiao Ting had said he'd depose Xiao Yan as family head, 100 years was more than enough for Xiao Yan to establish enough influence in the hearts of these people. Xiao Yan's trusted subordinates used their divine senses to lock onto Xiao Ting's side. This was no longer a simple matter of who would become family head. Perhaps after today, the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family would undergo earth-shattering changes. Xiao Ting sat in the family head seat, his expression dark as he watched everything unfold. After a long while, "Ha ha ha ha!" Xiao Ting laughed heartily and nodded repeatedly. Everyone in the hall was drawn to his smile as well. The people on Xiao Yan's side were even more on guard. Although Xiao Ting had voluntarily retired, he was still the Xiao family's strongest expert. If he wanted to take action, all of them together might not be enough to stop him. "Xiao Yan, your growth over the past 100 years has truly gratified me," praised Xiao Ting. Then he smiled calmly and pointed at the Great Hall. "What are you doing? Are you trying to usurp the throne and rebel? You've been the family head for 100 years, and your wings have hardened. Are you trying to steal father's position?" Xiao Yan's lips quivered. He still remembered Xiao Ting's teachings when he was young. The Xiao family was eternally loyal to the god race. They would be the god race's sharpest sword against Yao and demons. But now, Xiao Ting felt like a stranger to him. Not only was he allied with Yao and demons, but he also wanted to drag the entire Xiao family down with him. "Father!" His tone was almost begging, and his eyes flickered with confusion. Others might not understand the meaning behind Xiao Yan's words, but Xiao Ting did. "It seems you already know. Did Xiao Hu tell you?" asked Xiao Ting coldly. These words were also true, and there was no room for discussion to prove that all of this was true. Xiao Yan's eyes flashed as he stood in the hall. He stared fixedly at Xiao Ting, his thick brows tightly knitted together. Why? Why is this happening? He didn't care about the position of family head at all. If Xiao Ting hadn't forced him to take it, he would have died. He didn't even think about the position of the head of the Xiao family. But now he couldn't let the Xiao family fall into the hands of someone like Xiao Ting. He couldn't let the Xiao family's glory be destroyed by Xiao Ting's hands. He couldn't let his name be cursed for all eternity. Even now, he still hoped that Xiao Ting would realize his mistake and mend his ways. As long as he could turn back, Xiao Yan could pretend none of this had ever happened. "Are you interrogating me? Hand over the clan leader's golden seal, be obedient." From Xiao Ting's tone, it was clear he was threatening them. The entire hall was shrouded in a gloomy aura, so oppressive that no one dared to breathe. Xiao Yan gnashed his teeth and stared into Xiao Ting's eyes, his eyes filled with misery. In the end, he was completely disappointed. Impossible. He severed his final hopes for Xiao Ting, then chuckled and shook his head. "You're old. Since you've abdicated and handed your position to me, there's no reason for me to return it. Under my leadership, the Xiao family's glory will still be limitless. Don't worry about the clan any longer. Go enjoy your life." He stared directly into Xiao Ting's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ting narrowed his eyes. "Impudent!" He raised his voice slightly. "Xiao Yan, you need to know that everything you have was given to you by me. If you want to take it back, you can take it back at any time. What I gave you is yours. What I didn't give you, you stole it. Do you understand?" "Understood." Xiao Yan sighed. He glanced at the golden seal in his hand, then put it away in his ring. Immediately after, his entire aura rose by quite a bit, and he raised his head high. "Then your child will definitely steal it today." Good, good, good. Xiao Ting really did give birth to a good son. Xiao Ting seemed infuriated. His face was purplish red. He couldn't help but nod. As he looked at Xiao Yan, who refused to budge an inch, he said good 3 times in a row. Then, he waved his hand. Take him down. Whoosh. The crowd instantly split into 3 groups. One group didn't know what was going on, or they wanted to remain neutral. The other 2 groups belonged to Xiao Yan and Xiao Ting. They stood in sharp opposition. From the looks of things, Xiao Ting's men seemed to have the upper hand. Those who stood on Xiao Ting's side were generally old members of the god race. Whether it was in terms of prestige or cultivation, they were far stronger than Xiao Yan, who'd only recently been groomed as his trusted aides. Xiao Yan's men were completely surrounded. They gripped their weapons and circulated their divine power as they stared at the crowd. That's great. It seems like these are the trusted subordinates that you've cultivated. They've all jumped out. That saves me the trouble of slowly investigating them in the future. Xiao Ting remained seated in the family head's throne, his eyes flashing with fierce lightning. With a rumble, 2 lightning dragons shot towards the palace doors, which slammed shut. The entire hall became pitch black, and the only thing that could be seen was the flickering lightning around him. Under the illumination of the lightning, his face appeared especially sinister. Xiao family members, heed my command. Eliminate the rebels. Those who remained neutral were stunned when they saw this scene. When he saw Xiao Ting's terrifying face, he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Could it be that the Xiao family was about to spill rivers of blood? Creak. Just as Xiao Ting and Xiao Yan's men were about to attack, the tightly shut palace doors opened a crack. Blinding light shone into the palace through the crack. Beneath the blinding light, everyone saw a woman with a veil covering her face. However, because the light was too blinding, no one could clearly see who she was. After pushing through enough space for one person to pass through, the palace doors didn't open any further. The woman's back was against the light. She stepped through the crack and slowly made her way to the center of the palace. Everyone in the hall froze. Xiao Ting and the besieged Xiao Yan were shocked as well. Xiao Yan is your last son, yet you're still trying to kill him? Do you think you're worthy of your junior apprentice sister, Zhao Xiu? You. Xiao Ting's hands inexplicably trembled as he gripped his chair. The veiled woman smiled calmly. Xiao Ting, you've really been a failure your entire life, but I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you. Beneath her veil, a hint of disdain flashed across the woman's face. She glanced at Xiao Yan. Chapter 1343. To find my man. In this state of mutual hostility, Xiao Yan's side was clearly at a disadvantage. Don't be fooled by the fact that they were surrounding Xiao Yan and opposing Xiao Ting's people. In fact, none of them had any confidence, especially when the palace doors were closed. They even doubted whether they could make it out alive. The veiled woman's appearance shattered the tense atmosphere. Her disdain for Xiao Ting and her demand to leave gave Xiao Yan's trusted aides a glimmer of hope. Although they did not know the identity of the veiled woman, they were already moving closer to her. During this time, no one dared to act rashly. The veiled woman looked calmly at Xiao Ting, who sat in the family head seat. It wasn't until Xiao Yan and the others had gathered around the veiled woman that she turned her head away. Without saying another word, he walked toward the gate of the palace unhurriedly. You want to leave? At this moment, an old man with a long white beard jumped out from the crowd. Although he looked old, his movements were not inferior to those of an upright man in his prime. He fiercely grabbed the veiled woman's shoulder with his dragon-catcher hand, but before he could touch her shoulder, the entire palace stirred up a violent gust of wind with a bang. The old man was also sent flying several feet by the wave of air and crashed into the coiling dragon pillar in the palace. A look of shock appeared on the face of the person in the hall. The old man who had just attacked was a peak celestial being realm expert. However, the veiled woman did not stop at all. She still maintained the slowest pace. Vaguely, The people in the hall seemed to feel that she was deliberately walking so slowly. It was only 80 meters long, but it took the veiled woman about 10 minutes to walk. Because of her thunderous methods just now, no one rashly tried to stop her. When they reached the palace's doors, Xiao Yan's trusted aides hurriedly pushed them open and escorted him out of the palace. But at this moment, the veiled woman stopped in front of the door. "Are you sure you want to let us go just like that?" She didn't turn around. Instead, she spoke with her back to the people in the hall. "But you have to think this through. Once you walk out of this palace, you won't have another chance. This is your last chance. Are you sure you don't want to fight for it?" Everyone in the hall knew who she was talking to. When their gazes fell on Xiao Ting, they saw that his hands were still trembling as he gripped his chair. His old, murky eyes flickered incessantly. It looked like he was struggling. The veiled woman in front of the palace didn't leave during this period of time. She just quietly waited until a long sigh came from within the palace. Under the veil, she revealed a disdainful smile and lifted her leg to cross the threshold of the hall. The wind whistled past. The gate of the palace was slowly closed by the howling wind. When the gate was closed, the veiled woman looked back at the palace. Only when there was a gap in the door did the veil on her face fall off. Many of the older generation in the hall couldn't help but narrow their eyes. Eldest Mississippi, when they wanted to take another look to confirm it, the door was already closed. "Emperor, the clan head's golden seal is still in that traitor Xiao Yan's hands." As the door closed, someone lit a fire in the walls, then furrowed his brows and pointed anxiously at the door. Now they remembered the clan head's golden seal. When Xiao Yan and the others retreated, they knew it was in his hands. However, none of them thought about leaving it behind. Xiao Ting didn't even glance at the man. The kneeling man felt as if he'd made a fool of himself. He awkwardly retreated to the side, then the older generation spoke. "Emperor, just now." That seemed to be the eldest Mississippi. The older generation nodded. They'd all seen her the moment the door closed. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yan's hands trembled even more. He hurriedly pulled out a bag of powder, poured it into his palm, and sucked in a few mouthfuls. Only then did his trembling ease a little. He exhaled comfortably. After a while, he seemed to have completely calmed down. He craned his neck and said, "It's just the clan head's golden seal. Don't tell me I'm not as good as the clan head's golden seal?" Everyone bowed their heads. Xiao Ting looked at the old fogies with a warning gaze. "In the future, no one is allowed to mention the eldest Mississippi. She died a long time ago." "Yes, sir." The kneeling elders trembled as they nodded. From this day forth, Xiao Yan's name is erased from the clan. As for those who left with him, their names are erased from the clan. Their vassal clans are no longer under the Xiao family's protection. "I'm a little tired. You're all dismissed." As Xiao Ting spoke, everyone in the hall kowtowed. Even Xiao Ting, who sat in the family head seat, vanished without a trace. Eldest Mississippi, many of the people who were brought out by the veiled woman from the hall also recognized the veiled woman's identity. "It's me. I'm back." The veiled woman nodded and chuckled. The older generation all revealed gratified smiles. Xiao Yan furrowed his brows and walked out in a reproachful manner. "Big sister, why did you come? Do you know how dangerous it was just now? If I hadn't come, wouldn't my foolish little brother have died here?" The veiled woman smiled and patted Xiao Yan on the shoulder. Xiao Yan's face reddened. He didn't even dare look her in the eye. He stiffly turned his head away and stared at the tightly shut palace doors. What about the people inside? Who cares about them? Since they're willing to follow Xiao Ting, let them follow. The same goes for those who remain neutral. You don't need to try to rope them in. Even if you do, they'll just go with the flow if something happens, snorted the veiled woman. Xiao Yan thought about it. That made sense. Then what should we do now? Although Xiao Yan had been the head of the Xiao family for 100 years, he seemed to lose the ability to think in front of the veiled woman. He had to ask for her opinion on everything. In truth, he couldn't be blamed. This was a habit he'd developed since he was a child. Before you came, didn't the foxes already seek you out? Asked the veiled woman. Are we really going to work with the nine-tailed foxes? Asked Xiao Yan. Why not? The veiled woman pursed her lips into a smile. What do you think? When the others heard this, they couldn't help but freeze. Foxes. Weren't they, Yao? The Xiao family had always disliked other races. Of course, the younger generation was a bit better off, but the older generation was the strongest against them. But since they'd fought their way out with Xiao Yan, they were now in the same boat. Besides, they weren't particularly opposed to the foxes. We can. The foxes have always been a neutral race. We've never had much of a grudge against the Xiao family. After splitting from the Xiao family, it'll be difficult for us to establish ourselves on the Divine Mountains. Not many people would dare take us in. Going to the foxes isn't a bad choice, said the elder in the crowd. The old man in the crowd spoke, and the others nodded in agreement. The Xiao family's power was truly terrifying. Now that they'd split from the Xiao family, aside from the Divine Mountains' Holy Lands, no one else would dare take them in. But the Holy Lands didn't lack people like them. If they took them in, they'd have to worry that they were spies sent by the Xiao family. Going to the foxes wasn't a bad choice. The veiled woman couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. Who said we were going to live with the foxes? If we stay, we naturally have to stay on the Divine Mountains. Everyone was startled. They couldn't think of any place the gods could take them in. Immediately, the veiled woman smiled, and there was a blush on her face. Chapter 1344. The Void Outside the Void. Yi Zichen cut a sorry figure. He stared at the black hole behind him and thumped his chest, panting. It wasn't just him. Pu Jingwan, Yang Jian, and the 20 rulers Han Nan had sent weren't much better off. They all stared at the black hole in shock. The howling celestial dog's black fur was as messy as straw. It lay on the ground and rolled its eyes at Yang Jian. Yang Jian. When Yi Zichen finally calmed down, he shouted angrily. Yang Jian walked over with a wry smile. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. When the rulers saw Yang Jian's apologetic expression, they wanted to get angry, but because of his status as a special envoy, they couldn't do anything. Pu Jingwan, on the other hand, had no such qualms. She sent him flying with a flying kick. The sudden attack sent Yang Jian flying 100 meters away. When Yi Zichen saw this, he hurriedly rushed over and grabbed Pu Jingwan, afraid she'd rip Yang Jian to shreds. Yi Zichen was furious, but he didn't want to see his bro die. Pu Jingwan glanced at Yi Zichen, then hatefully shook him off. Yang Jian smiled apologetically and flew back. As soon as he arrived, he heard Pu Jingwan hurl a torrent of curses at him. I almost died in that black hole. Don't you know I'm not married yet? I'm such a beautiful young lady, yet I almost died in the spatial turbulence. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Yang Jian apologized profusely, as if he were praying to the Buddha. As for why this had happened, the time had to be traced back to an hour ago. Yi Zichen and the others had left the outside through the black hole. Their original destination was the God Realm's central divine mountain. However, on their way, the space within the black hole suddenly collapsed. Yi Zichen and the others were sucked into the spatial turbulence. Everyone was dumbfounded. Fortunately, there were quite a few hegemons caught up in the spatial turbulence, and Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan's realms were high enough to force them out of the spatial turbulence. You scared me half to death. Pu Jingwan put her hands on her hips, ran her hands through her hair, and panted. Yang Jian smiled bitterly and apologized. He knew he couldn't blame her for getting angry. Yang Jian had set up the black hole. For a black hole of his level, a spatial collapse was the lowest level of error. And because of this mistake, more than 20 of them almost lost their lives. All right, old Yang, don't blame yourself. Aren't we all fine now? Yi Zichen couldn't bear to hear Yang Jian blame himself. He patted him on the shoulder, signaling him not to take it to heart. Then, he looked at Pu Jingwan. Don't be angry. Pu Pu Jingwan suddenly threw herself at Yi Zichen, sobbing. Handsome guy in ancient costume, you scared me to death. Yi Zichen had wanted to persuade her, but when he saw her like that, he knew that he was worrying for nothing. He forcefully pressed her head down and pushed her away, keeping a suitable distance between them. Pu Jingwan pouted as she was pushed away. Yi Zichen's gaze was solemn. You'd better be careful. When you get to my place, you'd better keep a distance of 10 meters from me at all times. You're not allowed to act like a spoiled child in front of me, and you're not allowed to have any physical contact with me. What? Do you have a girlfriend? Pu Jingwan asked. More than one, said Yang Jian mischievously. Yi Zichen really wanted to punch Yang Jian twice when he saw how annoying he was. Pu Jingwan nodded and laughed. I understand. I'll do my best to control myself in the future. Our employer's satisfaction is the highest honor for us bounty hunters. As a gold medal bounty hunter, I won't let my employer worry about me. She made this promise, but Yi Zichen didn't dare confirm whether she was telling the truth or not. Even so, he felt a bit more at ease now that she'd said it like that. Yi Zichen glanced at the empty space around him and said, How far are we from my place? How far are we from my place? Do we need to build another black hole to get there? It was necessary to jump through space between epochs. Even a peak sovereign realm expert would need to spend hundreds of years just to travel through space. The black hole had shattered, so he couldn't determine their exact location. That was why he'd asked this question. In truth, we'll be there soon enough. Just now, the black hole shattered because too many rulers went in. That's why it couldn't withstand the pressure and shattered. We're already outside your era. If we fly, it'll probably take half a day. If it's a black hole, let's fly. Pu Jingwan raised her hand. She was a bit scared. If they ran into spatial turbulence again, she really wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, she'd learned a few things. Although they'd left through the black hole, they weren't going outside the quarantine zone. From the sound of it, they were going to another era. She was happy to do this. In all her life, she'd never gone outside the first era before. This time, not only would she earn money, but she'd also get to travel at public expense. She'd really made a killing. We think flying isn't a bad idea either. The rulers raised their hands as well. Even the howling celestial dog barked a few times. Yang Jian placed his last hope on Yi Zichen. Let's fly, bro. I'm not doubting your ability. Look, the minority has to obey the majority. We have to be more democratic, don't you think? Yi Zichen gave him a reassuring look, then patted him on the shoulder. What else could Yang Jian say now that he had said it like this? He'd definitely lost face. If he wanted to get it back, he'd have to wait for the next time. He just didn't know if there'd be a next time. These people were all traumatized. Yang Jian had been to the third era before, so he knew its exact location. He led the way, while Yi Zichen and the others followed behind. From the third era to the first era, this round trip took nearly a month. Yi Zichen had no idea what the situation was like in the third era. When he left, the three great emperors had appeared, and given the ambiguous relationship between the upper three realms, they couldn't just start fighting, could they? Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself, that's quite possible. Who knew? The demon emperor might have used the deaths of the demon generals and demon gods as an excuse to point the finger at Zhou Wu. The Yao might have taken advantage of the chaos to attack. Didn't that mean the third era was in chaos? OL Yang, can we hurry back? Before he could finish his sentence, Yang Jian, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. It wasn't just him. The 20 rulers stopped as well, and Pu Jingwan walked right up to Yi Zichen. What is it? There's movement up ahead. Yang Jian narrowed his eyes. Pu Jingwan knit her brows. The newcomer's cultivation isn't low. When Yi Zichen heard that, his heart trembled. The next moment, he saw a frantic young woman. When she saw them, she immediately ran towards them. She shouted. Chapter 1345. Those beautiful eyes. The girl's panic didn't seem fake. Her hair was a mess, and her clothes weren't enough to cover her body. Large swaths of her snow-white skin were exposed, and her feet were bare. She pursed her lips tightly as she ran towards Yi Zichen and the others. Yang Jian stood at the front, his gaze cold. He pushed the girl away, preventing her from getting any closer. The panic-stricken girl became even more frantic at this moment. She couldn't help but beg and even knelt down. Demons! Yi Zichen knit his brows. He could clearly sense the demonic aura of the demon race emanating from the girl. He'd never had a good impression of the demons. "What beautiful eyes!" exclaimed Pu Jingwan. Pu Jingwan exclaimed in surprise. Yi Zichen looked into her eyes. They really were beautiful. Her eyes were as clear as the blue sky, as clear as the ocean. There was no trace of impurity in them. Just looking into her eyes was enough to cleanse one's soul. After begging a few times to no avail, the girl knelt on the ground, covered her face, and sobbed. As she sobbed, she looked so pitiful and helpless. Yi Zichen and the others might be her last hope. "How about we?" Pu Jingwan wanted to say something, but stopped. The girl's sobs broke her heart. Normally, she would have called the girl over to her side, protected her, warmed her, and shed her tears. But things were different now. She was on a bounty mission, and her employer had the final say. All she had to do was ensure her employer's safety. As for anything else that wasn't part of her mission, she didn't have to worry about it. As a result, she only got halfway through her sentence before swallowing the rest. It wasn't just Pu Jingwan's heart that broke. Even Yang Jian couldn't bear to see her like this, and he quietly retracted his hand. During this time, he glanced at Yi Zichen. Although he didn't say anything, his actions proved his true feelings. The girl who was rejected outside was still crying. Her hands kept wiping away her tears, and she hung her head dispiritedly. She didn't want to run anymore. The moment she'd chosen to flee into the primal chaos, she'd lost all hope of regaining her freedom. Run. Could she outrun rulers? Her escape only slightly delayed the time of her capture, but the result could not be changed. When she first encountered Yi Zichen's group, even though she sensed that they were probably gods, she still held onto a glimmer of hope. The result was barely satisfactory. No more running. He couldn't run anymore. He gave up. He would let her cry for a while to vent the unwillingness in her heart. Then, she would be captured by that person and go back to her dark life. Let her come over. Pu Jingwan's face lit up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the cheek. Even though Yang Jian had already started moving when he heard this, she was still a bit faster than him. When he saw Pu Jingwan in front of him, Yang Jian retreated. Pu Jingwan, on the other hand, was far better off than him. "Don't cry, come with me." Pu Jingwan draped a cloak over the girl's shoulders. She smiled, bent over, and reached out her hand. The girl, who was on the verge of despair, stopped sobbing. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were still breathtakingly beautiful. She looked up in a daze. Pu Jingwan's hand was like a ray of light in her dark, lightless life. It shone on her face and reflected in her eyes. Pu Jingwan, who'd called her old lady, was incomparably gentle. When Pu Jingwan saw that the girl still hadn't moved, she smiled warmly. She carefully wiped away her tears, then reached out her hand again. "Come." The girl burst into tears once more. She bit her lip, nodded, and reached out her hand. Pu Jingwan grabbed Yi Zichen's hand and draped the cloak over Yi Zichen's body. Then, she lifted Yi Zichen into her arms and walked over to Yi Zichen. "This is our boss. He was the one who decided to save you. If you want to thank someone, you should thank him," said Pu Jingwan to the young girl. "Thank you." The girl bit her lip and nodded gratefully. Yi Zichen could tell from her eyes that she had a lot to say, but her lips moved and nothing came out. All she could do was bow and thank Pu Jingwan repeatedly. The closer he got, the more he realized just how beautiful her eyes were. Yi Zichen stood across from her. He stared into her eyes and they seemed to sink in. After being stared at like that, the girl lowered her head in embarrassment. Only then did Yi Zichen come back to his senses. He'd lost his composure just now. However, in his heart, he couldn't stop muttering. How could her eyes be so beautiful? He'd only ever seen eyes like that on Lori. Back then, she'd never left the valley. She was as pure as a sheet of white paper. However, the young girl in front of him was somewhat different from her. From the young girl's eyes, he could feel that she had experienced too many changes in the world. She'd experienced despair and she'd resented others. Even so, it wasn't easy for her eyes to remain so pure. The eyes were the windows to the soul. If her eyes were like that, then her heart had to be like that too. Yi Zichen refused to believe that someone with eyes like that could have been deliberately sent to his side. Someone with ulterior motives. That was why, even though she was a demon, Yi Zichen had asked Pu Jingwan to let her in. Did you see that? Our boss has taken a liking to you. Little girl, you're so lucky. If you really don't know how to repay him, how about you marry him instead? When Pu Jingwan saw the girl blush and lower her head, she slyly leaned in and whispered in her ear. When the girl heard that, her face reddened even further, down to her ears. However, based on her expression, she didn't seem shy at all. Rather, she seemed nervous, and her fingers moved back and forth. I have someone I like already. That's not good news. Boss, look, this little girl already has someone she liked. You're like a fallen flower, but a heartless river. How about you see if I'm good enough? Pu Jingwan smiled flirtatiously. Pu Jingwan. Pu Jingwan's face darkened as she glared at her. The girl instinctively shrank back, then leaned closer to Pu Jingwan. Don't be afraid, and don't listen to Pu Jingwan's nonsense. I've never wanted you to marry me. I brought you here because I felt sorry for you. I didn't have any other intentions. Yi Zichen glanced at the girl, then sighed deeply. What's your name? Chapter 1346. Yi Zichen will take it. After learning the girl's name, Yi Zichen chatted briefly with her and learned a bit about her past. Anlu, 17 years old. She was a member of the Demon Realm's Earth Demon clan. She possessed the celestial demon bloodline, which only appeared once every 10,000 years. In order to obtain the celestial demon's soul and bloodline, the Demon Emperor accused the Earth Demon clan of colluding with outsiders and usurping the Demon Realm's lifeline. She'd taken advantage of the Demon Emperor's absence to escape the Demon Realm. In her panic, she'd run into the primal chaos and run into Yi Zichen and the others. When the rulers of the First Era heard about Anlu's past, they couldn't help but sigh. Especially at such a young age. Pu Jingwan's eyes reddened and she hugged Anlu tightly. She'd even taken her as a little sister. Yi Zichen was the same. A teenage girl's family had been wiped out. Moreover, his bloodline and soul body had to be seized by others. This was indeed quite tragic. But the celestial demon bloodline was truly terrifying. She was only 17, but she was already a half-step diviner. In the entire God realm, only the bloodline of the divine mountains and holy lands could compare to her. Anlu couldn't help but cover her face and cry. Pu Jingwan hugged her tightly, trying to give her some warmth. In that case, it's the Demon Emperor and his people who want to capture Anlu. Yang Jian furrowed his brows and snorted. Back in the day, you pretended to be a coward in front of me, but in the demon realm, you're vicious and merciless. How many of those who sit in that position are soft-hearted people? Yi Zichen's gaze was hostile as well. He turned to Yang Jian. If the Demon Emperor's people come, I'll leave them to you. No problem. Yang Jian nodded. If he dares say no to me, consider it my loss. Woof woof. The howling celestial dog barked. Yi Zichen and the others calmed Anlu down, then hurried toward the Third Era. In the process of advancing, Yang Jian, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. Everyone's gazes froze. If they weren't mistaken, the Demon Emperor's people had come to capture Anlu. Not long after, a team of at least 10 people appeared in everyone's line of sight. The one walking at the front was an enchanting woman with a sharp horn on her head. Her skin was dark and her face was exquisite. Behind her were also oddly shaped men and women, but they were all purplish-black skinned. These people all had extraordinary auras, especially the woman at the front. It was a sovereign. When she saw these people, Enlil was like a frightened rabbit. She burrowed into her arms, not daring to look in the direction of those people. "It's them, isn't it?" asked Pu Jingwan gently. Enlil nodded lightly, and there was a hint of fear in her eyes. It was a fear that was born from her very bones. From this, it could be seen what kind of treatment she had received in the demonic hall. "Don't be afraid. With Big Sister here, no one can hurt you." Yi Zichen hugged her head, then gave Yang Jian a look. Howling celestial dog. Woof, woof, his exclusive divine weapon, the Erlang lance, appeared in his hand. The blade dragged on the ground, and the celestial hound followed closely behind, quietly waiting for the group of devils to come. "That damned girl, she's pretty good at running," snorted the horned woman sinisterly. "Look, isn't that one over there?" The horned woman looked in Yi Zichen's direction, and her gaze froze. "They're coming." Yi Zichen's ruler spoke up, and the other rulers gradually followed suit. "You damned girl, you're pretty good at running." The demons had already caught up, and they looked as if they wanted to rip Enlil to shreds. They completely ignored Yi Zichen's group and headed straight for Enlil. Boom! A blade of light descended, and the female demon at the front instinctively took a step back. "Are you blind? Can't you see your grandfather is standing right there? Don't get in the way." The female demon didn't take Yang Jian seriously at all. "This is someone our demon palace wants. If you don't want trouble, hurry up and hand that girl over to us." As they spoke, the other demons had already walked up, and in an instant, the 20 rulers on Yi Zichen's side moved at practically the same time. Their rulers' domains intertwined, forming a massive domain. The demons who'd come to capture Enlil froze. The female demon's pupils constricted. She didn't seem too frightened. Instead, she calmly sized up Yi Zichen's group. Earlier, she'd only focused on the fleeing Enlil. Furthermore, as a member of the demon palace, she hadn't paid any attention to Yi Zichen's group. She hadn't even paid attention to her surroundings. Now that she looked them over, rulers. They were all rulers. Judging from their auras, they were all from the God realm. Just what faction of the God realm was this? How could they dispatch so many rulers at once? Were they from one of the 9 divine mountains? Based on the current situation, the female demon's side was at a complete disadvantage. She was the only ruler on her side. The others were all peak diviners. "Friends of the God realm, please forgive us if we offended you earlier," said the female demon with a calm smile. "Don't try to get close. I don't know you." Yang Jian said. "It doesn't matter if you don't recognize me." The female demon maintained her smile. "You don't recognize me, but you must know of the Demon Emperor's palace. We are from the Devil Emperor Palace, and this young girl is someone our Devil Emperor wants. I wonder if our friends from the divine race can make things convenient for us, so that we can go back and report to our superiors." "Demon Emperor Palace? Never heard of it," Yang Jian said. The female demon's face stiffened. Since the Demon Emperor Palace didn't know, it was obvious that they were deliberately looking for trouble. Demon Emperor Hall, God Emperor Manor, Fey Emperor Altar, Netherworld Emperor Palace. Anyone who lived in the 3 realms would know about these powers. Moreover, Yang Jian and his group were all ruler rank experts. Saying that they didn't know was clearly intentional. "You don't want to make things convenient for me?" the devil woman asked. "Scram. You're the one who's making things easier for me," Yang Jian said. As he spoke, Yang Jian spun the lance in his hand a few times, and wisps of cold light shone on the faces of the demons. "One more word and you'll leave your dog head behind." "Woof woof." Howling celestial dog barked. "I wasn't talking about you. Go back up there," said Yang Jian. As the female demon's expression shifted, A blue command medallion appeared in Yi Zichen's hand. Scram! When she saw the medallion, her expression changed dramatically. She took a few steps back, then looked at Yi Zichen. Can you tell me your name? That way we can report back to our superiors. Chapter 1347. The way home. The expressions of everyone from the devil race changed. This was directly challenging their devil hall, and was even challenging their devil emperor. Normally, they'd have long since attacked with their weapons, but in the face of so many rulers, all they could do was endure in silence. Their gazes landed on the female demon ruler. She was their leader, so it was up to her to decide what to do next. However, the way they saw it, she'd most likely choose to avoid the brunt of their attacks. As expected, the horned demon looked at Yi Zichen's group, as if trying to memorize their faces. After a long while, she nodded and retreated. The mountains don't move, but the waters do. We have plenty of time. Even now, the female demon's aura didn't diminish in the slightest. Let's go. She looked away, then led the demon sovereigns away from the chaotic void. At first, they walked one step at a time, but once they were 100 meters away, they suddenly sped up and disappeared from Yi Zichen's line of sight. And here I thought you were really strong. As he watched the demons flee, Yang Jian curled his lips in disdain. He spun the Erlang lance in his hand in a circle and put it away. The howling celestial dog followed Yang Jian's sneer and barked a few times at the group of devils. Let's go. Once the demons were out of sight, Yi Zichen glanced at Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan. To him, this was nothing more than a minor interlude. He didn't take it to heart at all. Even if the demons went back and complained to the demon emperor, so what? When Yang Jian slaughtered their demon gods, the demon emperor hadn't dared say a single word. Now, with Pu Jingwan, Han Nan's trusted bodyguard, and the 20 rulers, what did he have to fear? Even if the demon emperor hated him for this, it didn't matter. He had returned to the Third Era this time for the sake of making the already chaotic Three Realms even more chaotic. Yang Jian and the others continued forward, but to their surprise, Anlu suddenly knelt to the ground. No matter how Pu Jingwan tried to comfort her, she knelt and refused to get up. Thank you. Truly, thank you. After Yi Zichen and the others chased the demons away, Anlu's emotions underwent a drastic change. She didn't know how to repay these people for saving her life, so she could only express her gratitude in this way. Yi Zichen, who was walking in front of her, also stopped and grabbed her hand with a smile. I told you, it's nothing. It's just a small effort. With your current situation, it should be very difficult for you to return to the demon realm. Why don't you follow us back to the Divine Mountain? Don't worry, with us here, even if you're a demon, the people of the Divine Mountain won't dare to do anything to you. Yi Zichen patted her on the head, then glanced at Pu Jingwan, then continued onward with Yang Jian and the other rulers. Pu Jingwan immediately understood. She hugged Anlu, smiled, and comforted her. At this time, Anlu had long since cried her eyes out. Ever since her clan had been wiped out, she had never felt such warmth. She bit her lips and wiped away her tears, then looked at Yi Zichen's back. I'll repay you. Her tender voice was filled with undisguised sincerity. When Yi Zichen heard this, he didn't stop. He simply smiled at her, then clasped his hands behind his back and flew towards the Third Era's God Realm. That's the Third Era. Yang Jian, who was at the front of the group, stopped and pointed at a dazzling array of colors. Yi Zichen looked in the direction Yang Jian was pointing. In the distant void of primordial chaos floated an enormous compass, dazzling with light. Rather than calling it a compass, it was more accurate to call it a galaxy of stars. Countless celestial bodies revolved in an orderly fashion. The largest of these stars was most likely the god, Yao, and demon realms Yi Zichen was currently in. The compass was clearly divided into 3 parts, one for each of the upper 3 realms. Perhaps because it was recorded so far away, they couldn't really see the Divine Mountain. However, the river Styx, which flowed through all of the upper three realms, was like a dragon before their eyes. Beneath it were countless planets, corresponding to the myriad realms below the upper three realms. It was because of these realms that the gods, Yao, and demon realms flourished. This was the third era. It hadn't yet reached the end of the era. Everything was still thriving, full of life and vitality. Enlu, who'd been sobbing the entire time, stopped when she saw this. Her pure, beautiful eyes reflected the light of the third era, and they shone brilliantly. Was it like this before the first era? Enlu wasn't the only one awed by its brilliance. Pu Jingwan was as well. She stared at the third era's astrolabe in a daze, unable to take her eyes off it. She couldn't help but sigh. Probably. Yang Jian nodded. Is that so? Pu Jingwan was from the first era, but before the transcendence, she'd never taken even half a step out of it. By the time she was strong enough to leave, the first era had been ravaged beyond recognition by the primordial beasts. What she saw in the first era was a wretched, dilapidated world. Planets had been destroyed, abandoned, and scattered throughout the Milky Way. She'd fantasized about what the first era would have been like before the primordial beasts attacked. When she saw the third era, she finally had a better understanding. It was truly beautiful. Yi Zichen didn't say anything, and the others weren't in a hurry either. Their faces were filled with tranquility as they looked at the galaxy compass of the third era. They looked at its magnificence and brilliance, using their own eyes to portray all of this, deeply imprinting this most beautiful scene into their hearts. Meanwhile, Yi Zichen didn't move. It wasn't that he was captivated by its beauty as well. He had to admit that the astral compass was beautiful, so beautiful that it couldn't be compared. However, what he was more concerned about now was that he wanted to find the planet he was looking for in this star chart. Until his pupils constricted. He saw it. He'd spared no effort in searching, and in the midst of all the stars, he'd found a single, azure planet. It was tiny. Just a tiny one. But he'd found it. He stood quietly in the middle of the crowd and gazed at the tiny planet. It was still brimming with energy, and it continued its orbit. During this time, he felt an urge to skip the divine mountains and go straight back to that planet. That was his home, that was his root. He wanted to go back, but after a few internal struggles, he gave up. The third era was coming to an end. He had to stay in the god, Yao, and demon realms and seize celestial fate. He had to fight them for it. But that didn't matter. Although it wasn't time to go back yet, at least. Chapter 1348. Chapter 1348. Meeting the Demon Palace. As the most powerful faction in the demon realm, the Demon Palace's location was just as important as its authority. It spanned millions of kilometers, floating in the air above the demon realm. Anyone who could live in the Demon Palace had to be of high status and power. It's worth mentioning that, unlike the God Emperor's estate, the Demon Palace was managed by Kuei Lin, first demon god Tagu, and second demon god Sumeru. Tagu occupied the north, Sumeru occupied the south, and Kuei Lin occupied the center. The three of them were in charge of their own factions and didn't interfere with each other's affairs. Today, however, first demon god Tagu and second demon god Sumeru, who never interacted with each other, met outside a small, unknown village in the demon realm. You know now, right? Aren't you the same? The two old fellows, both with one foot in the grave, didn't even look at each other. They stood about 100 meters apart, each beneath an ancient tree. Just like that, they began their conversation. It seems you've planted a spy in his place, too. Likewise. Didn't you plant a spy in my place as well? Silence. Another long while passed. Let's hurry up and finish our conversation. If we can plant a spy in Kuei Lin's place, he'll naturally plant one as well. Naturally, he would have planted a spy among us. Perhaps he already knows about our meeting. Afraid of him? Can you stop acting all high and mighty, you old man? That's what annoys me the most. If you're annoyed, then scram. He could sense that the second demon god was a bit short-tempered. The conversation between the two of them stopped again. "Fine, I can't be bothered to argue with you. We've been fighting for our entire lives, and this era is about to end. What's there to fight about? You know Kuei Lin's been up to something. Since we haven't seen each other in hundreds of thousands of years, why don't we work together?" "Sure." Then it's settled. Another long silence. After a long silence, neither of them spoke. After a while, they looked at the two ancient trees again, but the figures of the two of them were long gone. As for when and how they'd left, no one knew. Those two old geezers. Kuei Lin sat on his throne in the central Demon Emperor Palace. Someone had just reported to him that Tagu and Sumeru had left at the same time. With his intelligence, he could naturally sense something, but he only smiled faintly and did not pay much attention to it. What he didn't expect was that these two old fellows, who had kept each other in check for hundreds of thousands of years, would actually bury the hatchet for him. However, since he was able to surpass the latecomers and step on them to sit on the throne of the Demon Emperor, he was not afraid of what these two old fellows could do under his nose, not to mention that he still had important people to receive. He retracted his gaze and looked down the hall. On the left side of the purple carpet in the center of the hall was a symbol of nobility. Guli sat on the chair with his eyes closed. At this moment, it was the time of the promise he made in 3 days. He appeared in the Devil Hall because he wanted to keep it. "We've been sitting here for almost 6 hours. We still don't know when they'll be back. Why don't we discuss it? I want to see Enlu," said Guli, cutting him off. Kuei Lin's eyes flashed with fury at this abrupt interruption. When he thought of Gu Li's status, he forcibly suppressed his anger. A fake smile surfaced on his face, then he sat down with Gu Li and waited. After a while, an alluring woman appeared in front of the Demon Emperor's palace. The Demon Emperor recognized the man at a glance and asked directly, "Have you found Miss Enlu?" This woman was none other than the demon ruler Yi Zichen and the others had encountered earlier. Her eyes flashed with a dark light, and when she saw Gu Li in the hall, she hesitated. "You're not an outsider." "Just say it," said the Demon Emperor. "Someone kidnapped young Lady Enlu," said the horned female demon ruler. Gu Li's expression darkened. He grabbed the armrest and snapped it in half. He shot to his feet and glared menacingly at Kuei Lin. "It seems you've hardened your heart." He'd come here to take Enlu back, but when he arrived, Kuei Lin told him she wasn't in the Demon Emperor's palace. He'd already sent people to look for her. But now this woman said Enlu had been kidnapped. Guli could tell that she was a ruler. She was strong enough to rank in the top 10 of the Demon Realm's experts. Someone like her had gone out to look for Enlu, but now she said she'd been kidnapped? Was it the first and second demon gods doing? They had no reason to attack. What good would capturing Enlu do them? Or was it the work of Yao or gods? Was that even possible? "Since you don't want to let her go, there's nothing for us to talk about." Guli looked away coldly, then tried to leave the palace. The Demon Emperor knit his brows and turned to the female ruler. "Who kidnapped her?" "Outsiders," said the female ruler. Guli, who was just about to leave, slowed down. Then he heard the woman continue, "We saw Miss Enlu when we went to the Primal Chaos Void, but by then she was already under the control of a group of outsiders. Furthermore, he said he wanted Enlu. His name is Yi Zichen. If you want Enlu back, you should go find him yourself." Swoosh. A blur appeared in front of the female ruler. Gu Li's arm fiercely grabbed her shoulder, the immense force causing her to feel pain. However, when he thought about how this person dared to speak to the Demon Emperor in such a manner and how the Demon Emperor seemed to regard him highly, he felt a chill run down his spine. The female ruler could only endure the pain. Gu Li said, "Let's go." "Did you just say that Enlu was kidnapped?" "Yi Zichen." Boom. Suddenly, Gu Li's surroundings shone resplendently. They could vaguely make out tiny celestial bodies hovering beneath the radiance. He was only a diviner, but his aura was so strong that even the female hegemon wanted to kneel before him. Kuei Lin's pupils constricted. He looked at Gu Li with greed and yearning. This is the Emperor's celestial fate. Forget about the female chancellor, even Kuei Lin couldn't help but want to submit to Gu Li when he sensed his aura. This was the power of the Emperor's star. Yi Zichen, you again, Yi Zichen. Gu Li pushed the female ruler away, his veins bulging. His eyes were sinister as he clenched his fists and gnashed his teeth. If it was anyone else, Gu Li wouldn't believe it. If it was Yi Zichen, he'd believe it. His arms and shoulders trembled uncontrollably as he clenched his fists. Then he turned to look at the Demon Emperor. Only then did the Demon Emperor see that Gu Li's eyes were filled with stars. Chapter 1349. Chapter 1349. The Shao family. Wow, so this is the god realm of the ancient times. Pu Jingwan was as happy as a fairy. She tapped the air with the tips of her toes, a look of amazement on her face. She held Enlu's hand as they stared at the ancient yet lively city on the Divine Mountain. Since they'd entered the Third Era, they were currently on the Northern Divine Mountain. The other rulers all had different expressions. Some of them had lived through the First Era before the beasts' attack. They'd seen the Divine Mountains before. However, the beasts' attacks had destroyed the upper realms of gods, Yao, and demons first, so they'd never seen it again. Now that they'd arrived in the Third Era and seen the Divine Mountains, they couldn't help but recall many dusty memories. Some rulers, like Pu Jingwan, belonged to the new generation. Being able to see the ruins of the ancient capital that couldn't be seen in the First Era, it was inevitable that many people would feel amazed. Is this really necessary? Even if you don't have the upper realms of gods, Yao, and demons, you've at least seen historical dramas, right? Is there a need to be so surprised? Yi Zichen couldn't help but purse his lips when he saw Pu Jingwan's jaw drop. That's not the same. Pu Jingwan pursed her lips and nudged Yi Zichen with her shoulder. Everyone here is wearing historical clothing. I thought you were cosplaying. Go be sad. Now I'm going to switch targets. I don't like you anymore. I couldn't ask for more, said Yi Zichen calmly. You. Pu Jingwan pointed at Yi Zichen. After a while, she looked away and said to Enlu, Enlu, let's go. We don't want to hang out with them anymore. As she spoke, Pu Jingwan held Enlu's hand and landed in a nearby city. Yi Zichen sighed helplessly. This was clearly the bodyguard Han Nan had hired for him. How could she abandon her employer and go off on her own? She wasn't doing her job well. If only the Bounty Association had an app. He had to give Pu Jingwan a bad review. Fortunately, the Divine Mountains didn't seem to be in the middle of a war. Yi Zichen relaxed. Pu Jingwan was like a tourist on a scenic tour. She weaved through the streets. Moreover, she was a stunning beauty to begin with. Coupled with her strange attire, she quickly became the focal point of the street. As for Yi Zichen and company, they followed behind her like nannies. If she liked anything, they had to buy it for her personally. This employer was a little aggrieved. Little Enlu, look, those people don't seem to be hostile towards you. As they shopped, Pu Jingwan comforted Enlu. Before she arrived, she'd been worried that the gods would hate her because she was a demon and cause trouble for Yi Zichen. But after walking for so long, even if the people on the street realized that she was a demon, they did not have much surprise or hostility. They treated her like an ordinary person. Such an experience allowed Enlu to let go of her worries, and a smile gradually appeared on her face. In fact, the Protoss are all-inclusive. Among ordinary people, they don't have such a deep sense of racial discrimination. Moreover, as they lived among the ranks of ordinary humans, they had no way of knowing the current state of affairs between the gods, Yao, and demons. As long as there is no war, they can live in harmony with any race. Yi Zichen chuckled. He wanted to completely dispel Enlu's worries. When Enlu heard this, she also smiled and nodded. Coupled with that pair of pure eyes, it was a mesmerizing sight to look at. I didn't expect you to be so good at comforting people. Pu Jingwan's divine sense transmission appeared in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. You're so gentle to Enlu. Tell me the truth. Do you really like her? Don't be fooled by the fact that she already has someone she likes. If you want, I can help you. Yi Zichen's warm smile froze. He glanced at Pu Jingwan, only to find she was looking back at him. She even winked at him, her expression rich with emotion. Soon after, she heard something in her sea of consciousness. You're crazy. At that moment, Yi Zichen's phone vibrated. He took it out. When Pu Jingwan saw it, she froze despite herself. You have it here too? Enlu, who was attracted by the sound, also looked over. However, her eyes were filled with curiosity. She had never seen such a thing in the devil race. Yi Zichen ignored Pu Jingwan's exclamation and opened his messaging app. As expected, most of the messages were from immortals in the group. They wanted to chat with him, but at the top of the list was a message from Wei Jie. Boss, a group of people from our gang came looking for you. I told them we didn't have anyone like that, but they said they knew you. I asked who they were, but they didn't say. I told them to contact you, but they said they didn't know how. They told me to contact you. Look. Boss, are you there? How should we deal with this? Boss, it's an emergency. I've already sent people to investigate them. They seem to be from the Divine Mountains, Shao family. I've already calmed them down. If you see them, write me a reply. Yi Zichen's pupils constricted as he read the messages. The Shao family had come looking for him. Could it be that they had already discovered it and wanted to strike first to gain the upper hand? Yi Zichen's expression was unsightly, but he didn't hesitate to reply. What's the situation? Boss, you've finally replied. They're with us right now. What's the situation with the Battle of Geniuses? When can you come back? In the meantime, I can keep an eye on them. I'm on the northern Divine Mountain right now. Wait for me at Skyspan City's East Gate. I'll be there soon. All right. Yi Zichen put his phone away solemnly. When the others saw his gaze, they said nothing and waited for him to speak. The sightseeing is over. At the eastern gate of Sky-Piercing City, Wei Jie waited there after sending out the news. The Shao family had come looking for him, and he was a little flustered. Back in the lower lands, he'd heard Yi Zichen mention that he had a grudge against the Shao family. Wei Jie. A group of people descended from the sky. Yi Zichen walked at the front, with Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan by his side. Boss. Wei Jie hurried up to greet him, his expression grave. Yi Zichen got straight to the point. What's the situation over there? How do you know they're from the Shao family? Are you sure? I'm sure. They're from the Shao family. There's no mistaking it. When he saw Wei Jie's confident expression, Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. How many of them are there? Did they say why they're here? They didn't. They just said they wanted to see you. As for their numbers, about 200 or 300, said Wei Jie. That many? Yi Zichen's expression shifted. He glanced at Pu Jingwan, Yang Jian, and the 20 rulers. Chapter 1350. Intolerable. After returning from the outside, Yi Zichen led his 20-some subordinates through the east gate to Skyspan City. The ordinary cultivators in the city could sense their ferocious aura. Anyone who met them would subconsciously make way for them in the middle of the street, consciously retreating to the two sides of the street, watching the mighty group of dozens of people leave. Boss, this is the place. Wei Jie, who'd been leading the way this entire time, pointed at an average-sized residence. It wasn't very large, but in a place like this, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, Wei Jie had to expend a lot of effort and money. Of course, it couldn't compare to Upheaval's headquarters in the lower lands, but it was enough to support Upheaval's early development. When he heard that, Yi Zichen stopped and turned to Yang Jian. In a bit, watch my eyes. The others nodded. Yi Zichen took a deep breath, then entered the residence. Since Upheaval had only just begun establishing itself on the Divine Mountains, aside from the Ascenders, there were few newcomers. The only people that could be seen in the courtyard were the maids Wei Jie had found or the ordinary guards at the Earth's supreme realm. When the maids and guards saw Wei Jie, they all bowed respectfully. "Are the guests still in the hall?" Wei Jie casually called out to one of the maids. She immediately stopped what she was doing and said softly, "Yes, they are." Yi Zichen waved her away, then exchanged a glance with Wei Jie. The Shao family was in the front hall. To tell the truth, Yi Zichen felt somewhat uneasy. No matter what, the Shao family was a colossal power on the Divine Mountains. Even if he'd always viewed them as nothing more than a stepping stone, that was only after upheaval had taken shape. The Shao family's sudden appearance threw a wrench in Yi Zichen's plans. He had to bump into them. "Wait for me outside and wait for my signal." Yi Zichen craned his neck and walked into the front hall. As soon as he entered, he saw that there were at least 200 people standing there. These people treated this place as their own home. Those who could sit on the chairs should be people with some power in the Shao family, and those standing on the sides should be ordinary members of the Shao family. Sitting on the chair in the middle of the room was a very old man. His face was covered with wrinkles, and he held a cup of hot tea in his hand. The moment Yi Zichen and company entered, they instantly attracted the attention of everyone in the room. The elder also conveniently placed the tea on the table and examined Yi Zichen seriously for a long time, as if he was thinking about something, and reminiscing at the same time. After a long time, his expression inexplicably changed. "You are," the old man said. "That's interesting. You're the ones who came here to find me." "I'm already here, but you don't recognize me?" Yi Zichen laughed. "You're Yi Zichen?" "Absolutely," Yi Zichen nodded. "I wonder who you are and why you brought so many people here." "This is our Shao family's Lightning Emperor, Shao Ting. Why aren't you bowing when you see the Celestial Emperor?" Two youths on both sides of the front hall suddenly spoke up. Yi Zichen's expression didn't change in the slightest. He looked at the old man sitting on the chair with a faint smile. His gaze was emotionless, but his heart was in turmoil. It was him. It was this old man in front of him who had prevented him from entering the God world. During his tribulation, he had unleashed 99 bolts of lightning, which had almost killed Kiki and reduced Su Yun to ashes. They finally met. Yi Zichen's heart pounded violently, but when it came to his performance, "You're the one in charge of the lightning punishment. All these years I've been thinking about you." "It's the same for me," said Shao Ting. "I didn't think you'd still make it up here, even after all that effort. Tell me, what are you here for? Could it be that the Emperor wants to make up for his mistake of letting me ascend the Divine Mountains, and wants to punish me here?" Yi Zichen smiled calmly. "That's what I was thinking," said Shao Ting. "But that's not why I'm here. I heard my good-for-nothing son ran over to you. Hand him over, and I'll just take him and leave." "Your Majesty, you must be joking," laughed Yi Zichen. "Why would your son run over to me? He's your son. You don't need to make excuses like this, do you? You don't want to hand him over? If I don't, how could I? You're making things difficult for me, aren't you?" Yi Zichen laughed amiably. Shao Ting's expression flickered, and he gradually released his lightning aura. His oppressive gaze pierced Yi Zichen's eyes, and a sinister smile flashed across his face. "It seems that allowing you to ascend to the Divine Mountains was a dereliction of duty on our part. Since you're unwilling to hand over my good-for-nothing son, I can't return empty-handed. You come with us," said Shao Chen. Whoosh! The Shao family's two sides instantly surrounded him, their eyes glinting menacingly. Yi Zichen's expression didn't change in the slightest. He stood calmly in the middle, taking in their ferocity. Then he turned to Shao Ting and smiled. "Your Majesty, what do you mean by this?" "Please come to my Lightning Emperor's estate and stay for a few days," said Shao Ting. "But I don't know you that well," laughed Yi Zichen. "It's fine. You'll slowly get to know me after a few days. My Lightning Emperor's estate is very hospitable. Besides, I've lived here for a long time already. Courtesy demands reciprocity, so I'd like to invite you to stay for a few days. It seems I can't refuse, said Yizichin. Yizichin shrugged helplessly, but he was still all smiles. Seated in his chair, Xiao Ting's eyes flashed with admiration, and he laughed. No wonder the Xiao family was so badly battered as soon as you arrived in the God realm. You've killed quite a few Xiao clansmen, haven't you? It's their own fault for wanting to ride all over me. How could I tolerate that? Of course not. Xiao Ting laughed inexplicably, then glanced meaningfully at the others. Now that I'm riding all over you. Of course I can't tolerate it, laughed Yizichin. Is that so? How about I show you, said Yizichin. Xiao Ting said nothing. Instead, he gestured casually. Yizichin didn't hesitate. He clapped his hands. All of you, come in. Instantly, Yang Jian and the other 20-plus rulers appeared. They'd been waiting outside for a long time. The sudden appearance of these dozens of sovereign realm auras caused the people in the front hall to reveal looks of terror. The people surrounding Yi Zichen instinctively retreated. Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan took advantage of the situation to stand by his side. At the same time, Yi Zichen shrugged and smiled calmly. Chapter 1351. Was it enough? Although the front hall was spacious enough, it was still a bit cramped with so many people. In terms of numbers, the Xiao family had an absolute advantage. In terms of head count, they could easily fight 10 against 1. But this wasn't a brawl. This was the Divine Mountain. There were clear divisions of cultivation, and each increase in cultivation level would create an insurmountable gap. Even the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family, how many rulers could they have? Besides, Xiao Ting's visit wouldn't be able to bring the rulers of their clans with him. The relationship between the three realms was so tense. Wouldn't the God Emperor order them to stay behind and defend the central Divine Mountain? The answer was obvious. Although the Xiao family had brought many people, most of them were only Sky Supremes. There were only a few diviners, and the only rulers were Xiao Ting and the two people beside him. Compared to Yi Zichen, there were 20 rulers, and Yang Jian was even stronger than a demon god. As for Pu Jingwan, he hadn't seen her fight a true expert. She'd stood out amongst the countless rulers of the outside, so how could she be mediocre? Yi Zichen smiled faintly at Xiao Ting, who sat firmly in his chair. Even under these circumstances, he could sit so calmly. He was worthy of his title as the Lightning Emperor. However, his fellow clansmen weren't as calm. The people around Yi Zichen were all rulers. They stood at the very peak of the three realms. Just who was this youth? How could he have so many rulers by his side? However, Wei Jie was an Earth Supreme. Although he couldn't sense the ruler's true cultivation levels, he was observant. But he was observant. He could clearly sense the changes in the expressions of the Xiao family when these people appeared. Emperor, do you think we have enough people? If you don't. Yi Zichen chuckled, then waved his hand and summoned a pitch-black, rust-covered pagoda. When they saw it, Xiao Ting and the two rulers' gazes shifted. The next moment, the pagoda flashed with light, and countless diviner-level Yao servants appeared in the spacious courtyard outside the front hall. The Yao servants stood according to their cultivation levels. The lower ones stood at the back, while the higher ones stood at the front. The one closest to the front hall was an enchanting woman in red. When she saw Yi Zichen, she respectfully knelt on one knee. The Yao servants followed suit. Master. The monstrous sound waves were deafening. The Sky Supremes who'd come with Xiao Ting turned pale with fright. How could they not sense that these Yao servants were all diviners? There was no need for the rulers by Yi Zichen's side to make a move. That should be enough to make them suffer. This should be enough, right? By now, even the two sovereigns sitting with Xiao Ting couldn't remain calm. Just the people before him alone were enough to establish a peak force, one that was almost as famous as the sacred lands of the 8 divine mountains. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda really is in your hands. Looks like the rumors are true. Xiao Ting smiled calmly, his eyes as calm as ever. The matter of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and the Xianyuan sword had long been made public, so there was nothing to hide. Even if some forces were still hesitant, it didn't matter. He had the support of the outsiders and these hegemons by his side. Yi Zichen even dared to jump up and fight them. In the past, he didn't dare to expose himself, so he had to tread on thin ice, but now what was there to be afraid of? That's right, I have it. What, Emperor Xiao Ting, do you want to try and take it from me? Yi Zichen chuckled. Of course not. With so many rulers around, even I wouldn't dare act rashly, said Xiao Ting. Then why don't you stay here as a guest? Are you trying to imprison me here? Asked Xiao Ting. I wouldn't dare. Yi Zichen shook his head. You're the God Realm's Lightning Emperor. You're in charge of Tribulation Lightning. I'm nothing more than a nobody. How could I possibly dare imprison an existence like you? I'm a hospitable host, so I'd like you to stay here for a while. Is that all right? No. Xiao Ting nodded. Is that so? As he spoke, Yi Zichen took a step back. Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan stepped forward as well. The two rulers by Xiao Ting's side immediately rose to their feet, and the other Xiao family clansmen's expressions froze. However, most of the Xiao family clansmen's hands trembled, and even the two rulers' breathing grew unsteady. Are you afraid of dying? Yi Zichen looked at the people around him with a playful smile, then patted their shoulders from time to time. Look, your hands are shaking. You can't even hold your weapons properly. Who do you think you're going to fight like this? With a gentle push, the man fell to the ground. His face was deathly pale, and he tried to rise to his feet, but his legs were so weak he couldn't. How unsightly! You're a member of the Lightning Emperor's estate, and you used to be so awe-inspiring. Now your legs are weak. Your Excellency, your people aren't very good either. As soon as he said that, Yi Zichen's gaze darkened. Hold them all. Your Excellency has come to visit my humble abode. How can we let him leave so easily? Let him go. At that moment, someone whispered through the front hall's entrance. Yi Zichen and the others turned to see a maidservant enter, accompanied by the manor's guards. The maidservant wore a veil. Yi Zichen had a vague impression of her. She was the one Wei Jie had questioned just now. The maidservant slowly walked into the front hall. Yi Zichen and the other rulers were bewildered, but the pupils of the Xiao family members constricted. The veil. It was the first miss. Yi Zichen glanced at the guard by her side. It was none other than Xiao Yan, who held the Xiao family's golden seal. You really refuse to give up. Even though we're already here, you still came looking for us. But you've seen the situation for yourself. Do you think you still have a chance of capturing us? The veiled woman walked up to Yi Zichen and smiled at Xiao Ting. Xiao Yan walked over, his face ashen. When he looked at Xiao Ting, his gaze was complicated. Don't go too far. If we really fight to the death, it won't be good for either of us. I was worried about your reputation and didn't tell you everything, but don't go too far. Do you think anyone would believe me? Try me. Xiao Yan glared. For some reason, Xiao Ting felt a little afraid in the face of Xiao Yan's threat. This sudden turn of events left Yi Zichen and the others dumbfounded. What's going on with the maidservant and the guards? Before they could react, Xiao Ting slammed the back of his chair. Let's go. Did I say you could leave? Yi Zichen's gaze darkened. However, the veiled woman spoke up. Let him go. Who are you? Who exactly was in charge here? Before Yi Zichen could say anything, the veiled woman suddenly lifted her veil and lowered it again. Yi Zichen waved her away without hesitation. Chapter 1352. Xiao Yumei. At Yi Zichen's signal, the Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda made way for them. No one stopped the Xiao family. As he left, Xiao Ting's eyes were dark and gloomy. No matter how calm he appeared, he couldn't help it. No matter how calm he appeared, he couldn't deny that they'd suffered quite a bit during their mission to capture Xiao Yan, Xiao Hu, and the others. That wasn't because of how badly they'd been injured or the price they'd paid. Face. Most importantly, they'd lost face. They'd failed to capture them, yet they'd had to leave with their tails between their legs. The Lightning Emperor's estate, which had always stood at the peak of the Divine Mountains, had lost a great deal of face. "You're letting them go just like that?" asked Yang Jian darkly as he watched Shao Ting and the others leave. Yi Zichen nodded noncommittally. When they'd all disappeared from the courtyard, he took a deep breath, then turned to the veiled woman. "You may." Everyone in the hall looked at the veiled woman. They knew that she'd spoken, which was why Yi Zichen had overturned his decision and let Shao Ting go without hesitation. By the veiled woman's side, Xiao Yan's expression shifted as well. He looked Yi Zichen up and down. Yi Zichen called out to her, and the veiled woman took off her veil. Her familiar, pretty face lit up with a warm smile. "Did you miss me? What do you think?" Yi Zichen chuckled. Xiao Yumei smiled back warmly, then hugged him tightly. The instant she entered his arms, her smile transformed into boiling hot tears that dripped onto Yi Zichen's shoulders like scorching pearls. "I missed you so much." "Me too." When she saw Xiao Yumei, Pu Jingwan, who was holding An Lu's hand, subconsciously compared her to herself. She'd always been so proud of her looks, but in front of Xiao Yumei, she couldn't help but compare them. Of course, that didn't mean she was inferior to Xiao Yumei. She was merely on par with her. When Yang Jian saw her, he froze. Xiao Yumei. Of course he knew her. Furthermore, when Chang Yi disappeared from the Moon Palace all those years ago, he'd heard she'd disappeared with Xiao Yumei. He waited silently on the side, then walked up the moment Yi Zichen and Xiao Yumei separated. "Is Chang Yi also on the Divine Mountain?" Xiao Yumei was stunned. In the past, Yang Jian had always been dressed like a normal immortal from the Heavenly Palace. Now that she saw him in Hawaiian attire, she couldn't immediately recognize him. "I am Yang Jian." Yang Jian pointed at his nose. Only then did Xiao Yumei come back to her senses. "Oh, Chang Yi isn't here." She went back to the sorcerer tribe. The Magi were a race that did not belong to any of the three realms. Like the Buddhist realm, they were a hidden race. Compared to the three realms of God, Yao, and Demon, they had far fewer clansmen. Any one of the 12 great shamans was at least an emperor-level expert in the outside world. Its status was extraordinary, and although it couldn't be compared to the outer realms, it wasn't much different. Yang Jian and Yi Zichen couldn't help but find it strange that Chang Yi was related to the shamans. But soon, they thought of a possibility. Hui. When he considered this, Yang Jian looked at Yi Zichen, his gaze somewhat strange. Everyone knew that before Chang Yi arrived at the Moon Palace, she was Ho Yi's darling. However, when they were fighting over the celestial medicine, Chang Yi ate both celestial pills, causing Ho Yi to be unable to ascend to the Heavenly Palace. If Chang Yi had returned to the shamans because of Ho Yi, then Yi Zichen and Chang Yi's recent ambiguous relationship, that seemed a bit troublesome. Little did they know, Yi Zichen was also feeling a headache coming on. Earlier, when they'd tied the marriage strings, he'd been worried about Ho Yi. Could it be that what was supposed to come had finally come? Xiao Yumei looked at Yang Jian and Yi Zichen, who were staring at each other. They covered their mouths and chuckled. Given her intelligence, she could roughly guess what they were thinking. However, she didn't point it out. Instead, she smiled and walked up to Xiao Yan. "Let me introduce you. This is my little brother, Xiao Yan." Xiao Yan. Everyone was stunned, especially Yi Zichen. When Xiao Ting first arrived, he'd clearly said that his good-for-nothing son had come to visit him. At that time, he really didn't know about it and felt that he was purposely looking for trouble. This Xiao Yan, it seemed he was Xiao Ting's son. That didn't matter. What mattered was how she addressed him. Younger brother. Didn't that mean she was also a member of the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family? Moreover, she was Xiao Ting's daughter? Don't overthink things. I've had nothing to do with Xiao Ting for a long time. Shouldn't you know who I am the best? Xiao Yumei smiled warmly and voiced Yi Zichen's confusion. Then she introduced him to Xiao Yan. This is your brother-in-law. Call him brother-in-law. In truth, Xiao Yan was more or less unwilling. Just who was this fellow standing in front of him? He would recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Back then, the Xiao family of the Lightning Emperor had overturned the rules of thunder and lightning multiple times for him. They had refused to allow him to ascend the Divine Mountain, but they had still allowed him to. Furthermore, he was the one who'd targeted the Xiao family multiple times. The ones who died at his hands were all Xiao Yan's trusted aides. What are you doing? Hurry up and call for help, Xiao Yumei said angrily. Although he didn't like the look of Yi Zichen, with Xiao Yumei present, he couldn't insist. Besides, when he faced Xiao Ting just now, he'd personally witnessed Yi Zichen's terrifying strength. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda and the Xianyuan sword. They could rival a Holy Land's ruler experts in numbers. Xiao Yan had no choice but to admit this sort of person was worthy of his sister. Brother-in-law. Yi Zichen reluctantly lowered his head. In truth, his face was covered in a bitter smile. The Xiao family clansmen he'd wanted so badly to deal with had actually become relatives. But that wasn't exactly, judging from Xiao Ting's attitude just now. There seemed to be some sort of grudge between him and Xiao Yumei and Xiao Yan. Yi Zichen nodded, then turned to Wei Jie. Arrange a room for Xiao Yan and the others. You should prepare more, said Xiao Yumei. What is it? We have about 300 people on our side. They're all staying at the inn right now. Yi Zichen's expression shifted, then he looked at Wei Jie. Do we have enough rooms? It's enough, but when our people come up later. Wei Jie wanted to say something but hesitated. When the time comes, I'll think of something. You go make the arrangements. At the end of the day, the location of the house was too small. Wei Jie had found a house that could only be described as a residence for a wealthy merchant. If you really wanted to view it as the foundation of a faction, it was too small. Wei Jie nodded and went to make the arrangements, but Yi Zichen suddenly thought of something and called out to him. Chapter 1353. Yi Zichen knows the Yao servants returned to the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. It wasn't that Yi Zichen didn't want to let them out, but the residence wasn't that big, and there were too many Yao servants. Letting them all out would make things a bit cramped. Wei Jie and the others got to work on Yi Zichen's orders. The rulers from the outside left to rest as well. At first, Yang Jian wanted to stay by Yi Zichen's side and protect him. But then he remembered that Yi Zichen and Xiao Yumei hadn't seen each other for a long time, and that they weren't going too far away. So long as he kept his divine awareness open, he'd be able to keep them safe. It's finally quieted down. Yi Zichen sat in a room he'd specially reserved for Yi Zichen and sighed. For nearly a month, he'd been constantly on the move. He'd learned far too many things he should have known, and many things he shouldn't have known. Endless pressure piled up on his heart. When he finally found some peace and quiet, he couldn't help but sigh. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Get some more rest. Xiao Yumei walked up to him and gently massaged his shoulders. She didn't need to ask. Just from the exhaustion on his face, she could tell how heavy his burden was. Yi Zichen, who sat on the chair, smiled, then patted her hand. I'm afraid it won't be easy. Once I've made arrangements for Xiao Yan and the others, I'll have to rush over to the central Divine Mountain. The Battle of Geniuses? You know about it too. Yi Zichen nodded. It's the Battle of Geniuses, but that's only secondary. Right now, the central Divine Mountain is the center of everything. Then why are you still going? Even if it's a quagmire, I have to dive in. What else can I do? Yi Zichen smiled helplessly. He naturally didn't want to go, but the gods, Yao, and demons were currently active on the central Divine Mountain, and he needed God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate. If nothing unexpected happened, Guli should be on the move soon. If God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate fell into his hands, whether it was for Yi Zichen or for the outside, it wouldn't be a good outcome. Besides, the outside had fulfilled all of his conditions. He couldn't disappoint them. Right, just now, Shao Ting came to capture Xiao Yan. What's going on? Asked Yi Zichen. It's a long story, but to put it simply, the Xiao family split up. Xiao Yan and his trusted aides left the Xiao family, replied Xiao Yumei. Split? Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows. An internal schism within a family clan wasn't something that was too shocking. Even the God Emperor's estate had experienced internal schism before. However, it was rumored that the God Emperor had suppressed it with lightning speed, and that family clan that wanted to split had disappeared from the God race. Similar situations occurred in the other sacred grounds of the Divine Mountains. Compared to God Emperor Zhou Wu's methods, the sacred grounds' methods were much gentler. Or they could move their emotions and reason with them so that they would give up on the idea of splitting. Although the two of them had never interacted with each other, they could not be considered enemies. Not to mention the God race, the demon race and the demon race would also be divided. The divergence of opinions, the division of resources, and the difference in status would all become the hidden factors for the internal division of a family. But it was unusual for this to happen in the Xiao family. Everyone knew that the Xiao family of the Lightning Emperor's manor was far more united than the other factions. Once the Lightning Emperor gave his orders, all the clansmen had to do was carry them out. In terms of resources and status, the Xiao family had an absolutely perfect management system. Their clansmen couldn't find any reason to resent them. Ever since the beginning of the Third Era, the Lightning Emperor's estate had never experienced a schism. It was almost time for the end of the Third Era, and now. Can you tell me the reason? Asked Yi Zichen. Political differences led to internal schism. Xiao Yumei didn't hide anything from Yi Zichen. Xiao Ting betrayed us. What betrayed us? Yi Zichen's heart trembled. Xiao Ting collaborated with the demons and Yao. It's that simple, laughed Xiao Yumei. Simple? That was absolutely no simple matter. Yi Zichen continuously knocked on the table with his hand, while his mind spun furiously. At first, he'd wondered why he hadn't made it public, but after thinking about it for a while, he decided against it. You did the right thing. His words seemed incoherent, but Xiao Yumei nodded and smiled. In truth, Yi Zichen was referring to the fact that they hadn't revealed this information. The Xiao family had deep roots in the God realm, and Xiao Ting had fought his way through all sorts of obstacles for the sake of the God realm. Anyone could betray the God realm, but only he. No one would believe him if he told them the truth. If Xiao Ting were to blame them, they'd blame Xiao Yan and the others. That would make it difficult for them to explain themselves. If they didn't reveal this information now, everyone would assume the family had split. Xiao Ting wouldn't reveal it of his own volition. As for why Yi Zichen thought Xiao Ting would betray them, it was because he trusted Xiao Yumei. But leaving them in the God realm is still troublesome, said Xiao Yumei with a frown. That was all she could think of. If Xiao Yan didn't reveal this information, they'd just assume the family had split because of political differences. But leaving Xiao Ting in the God realm was like hiding a ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. It's troublesome, yes, but given the current situation, that's all we can do. If you don't say anything, they won't say anything. Since they're collaborating with the demons and Yao, they'll eventually give themselves away. All we have to do is wait for them to reveal themselves. That'll be enough. But that's too much of a gamble, said Xiao Yumei. In truth, this was a risky strategy. Everything depended on the other side making a mistake before they could counterattack. This was far less risky than taking the initiative to attack. If the other side really did reveal themselves, that would be fine. But if they kept everything under control once they'd taken care of everything, they'd jump out and fight the god. That way, the God realm would be at an absolute disadvantage. They couldn't just sit around comfortably in the God realm. They had to put pressure on them. Only when they felt pressure would they become impatient. Impatience meant they couldn't plan everything out, which would lead to careless mistake. Yi Zichen rubbed his chin, mentally calculating how he could pressure them as directly as possible. Got it. Yi Zichen's worried face suddenly lit up with a smile. When Xiao Yumei saw this, she couldn't help but look puzzled. Yi Zichen took the opportunity to whisper in her ear. What do you think? I think it's possible, but are you sure you can do it? Asked Xiao Yumei. I'm not too sure, but I should be able to. Yi Zichen pressed his lips into a smile. At that moment, Wei Jie knocked on the door a few times. Boss, I've arranged for Xiao Yan and the others' accommodations. I even got by Xiaosheng's name. Speak. Chapter 1354. Yang Jian and the Great Sage. After Wei Jie revealed by Xiaosheng's true name, Yi Zichen was silent for a long time. It was obvious that his expression wasn't particularly good. His brows were deeply furrowed, but he vaguely sensed that this was only natural. The auxiliary star. Han Nan, who'd received Yi Zichen in the outside, was the first era's auxiliary star. The only reason he'd asked Wei Jie to ask for by Xiaosheng's name was because he was the third era's auxiliary star. Now it seemed, everything was pretty much as he'd expected. At the very least, there weren't many discrepancies. All right, I got it. You can go now. Yi Zichen waved at Wei Jie. Wei Jie bowed deeply to the door, then took his leave. Yi Zichen took out a pack of cigarettes, put one in his mouth, and tossed the rest onto the table. A wisp of flame appeared at the tip of his finger and lit the cigarette. The room was filled with the strong smell of smoke. What a pleasant surprise! Back in the outside, Yi Zichen had sensed that something was off. He'd said he wanted to see the minister of the left precisely to confirm his suspicions. Han Nan's refusal had pushed his suspicions to the limit. If he really wanted to hide it, he should have done it more seriously. Couldn't he have just randomly chosen a fake name? Why did he have to use his real name? Now that Yi Zichen returned and asked by Xiaosheng, the result would be the same. Or perhaps the people of the First Era wanted him to know all along. He couldn't figure it out. No matter what, Yi Zichen wasn't a parasite in the outsiders' stomachs. He had no way of knowing what they were plotting. However, he was certain that the auxiliary star was most likely the same person as the Third Era's auxiliary star. In other words, their master of the stars. He couldn't keep thinking about it. After all, their master of the stars was dead. Xiao Yumei tossed the cigarette but onto the ground and stamped it out. You still have these? Yi Zichen glanced at her and saw her fiddling with the pack of cigarette. Yi Zichen smiled and nodded, but didn't explain. She didn't ask either. She simply tossed the pack onto the table. Do you really have a way? She was obviously asking Yi Zichen what he'd asked earlier. I can give it a try. Besides, didn't you say it was empty? Since it's empty, we'll just buy it. You might not know this, but we have a backer. The profound pavilion? I know. You even know this. What do you think I've been doing on the Divine Mountain? I've spent 80% of my day looking for news about you. Xiao Yumei wrinkled her nose angrily, and then she spoke again. Who's that boy with you? I think she's a demon, but her eyes are very pure. I ran into her on the road. She's a rather pitiful child, so I brought her over. Yi Zichen still didn't explain too much about Enlu's identity. If Tiantian was still here, she'd be about that tall too. Xiao Yumei nodded, and her gaze became a little distant. When Tiantian was mentioned, Yi Zichen couldn't help but think of that cute little girl. When she saw him, she would run to his side, hug him and call him daddy sweetly. But who would have thought that this child was actually a god with godhood? War goddess, I really didn't expect this, Yi Zichen sighed. Yeah. Xiao Yumei also revealed a bitter expression. Although she and Tiantian weren't biological mother and daughter, they were definitely closer than biological parents. Once upon a time, they'd been each other's hope. In the end, they'd still separated. You and Chang Yi came here because of Tiantian, right? In response to Yi Zichen's question, Xiao Yumei was in low spirits. She simply nodded. He pulled her into his arms and gently patted her on the back. Xiao Yumei also silently leaned on his shoulder as she muttered while staring ahead. Do you think Tiantian's doing well? She should be doing well. No matter what, she's the war goddess. That title sounds pretty high and mighty. The two of them hugged and leaned against the window for a long time. In Xiao Yumei's heart, even now, she still saw Tiantian as her woman and cared about her every need. After a full hour, Wei Jie hurriedly rushed to the door. Boss, the great sage and Yang Jian started fighting. The great sage hefted his Rui Jingu Bang, his fiery eyes of truth flashing fiercely as he stared intently at Yang Jian. At first, the great sage hadn't been in his residence. The Xiao family particularly disliked Yao. Wei Jie was worried that the great sage's appearance would draw their attention, so he arranged for him and the Yao servants Yi Zichen had left behind to live outside. Just now, when Wei Jie went to fetch Xiao Yan's trusted aides, he told the great sage about Yi Zichen's return. When the great sage heard this, he rushed back to his residence, but he didn't see Yi Zichen. Instead, he saw Yang Jian flirting with the Xiao family's girls. Without even thinking about it, the great sage swung his staff at Yang Jian. Fortunately, Yang Jian's reaction was fast enough. He summoned his Erlang lance in an instant and blocked the rod. Otherwise, given the strength of the staff, even if he didn't die, he'd be half crippled. I told you, don't let me find you. The great sage wielded the Rui Jingu Bang in an awe-inspiring manner. He glared at Yang Jian as if he wanted to devour him whole. His pupils burned with faint flames. In contrast to the great sage's domineering demeanor, Yang Jian's behavior was far more shameless. Although he'd been ambushed, he was still all smiles. How long has it been since we last met? Don't you think brandishing your staff as soon as we meet? Isn't that a little damaging to our brotherhood? Who's your brother? Said the great sage. I've sent you so many messages, but you've been playing dead without replying. Really? Great sage, you sent me a message? Yang Jian feigned suspicion. If anyone else hadn't received a message, they'd definitely take out their phones to prove it. However, he didn't so much as move. Instead, his face was plastered with an infuriating smile. Maybe my phone ran out of battery halfway through. Can you not be so angry? The great sage glared at him. What? Do you want to fight me like we did back in the heavenly court? I admit, back in the heavenly court I was just a little bit weaker than you, but now, I can beat you 10 times over without breaking a sweat. Yang Jian smirked haughtily. Then let me, old son, experience it. The great sage swung the Rui Jingu Bang in a circle. A gust of wind blew the stone tiles off the ground. Yang Jian calmly pushed forward and the tiles fell back to the ground. The great sage was just about to attack when a hand gently pressed down on his shoulder. Brother, let me go. I have to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. The great sage hefted his staff and tried to walk forward, but Yi Zichen grabbed him by the shoulder to prevent him from acting rashly. Chapter 1355. The great sage's weakness. Yang Jian's expression was still as arrogant and despotic as ever. Back in the heavenly court, this monkey had bullied him so many times. Because he was poor, he couldn't bear to buy pills that could increase his cultivation. Even when he was injured, he used his spiritual energy to recover. He couldn't afford healing pills. Over time, he'd once been the heavenly court's #1 war god, but now his cultivation was far below that of the monkey. Back in the heavenly court, Yang Jian had suffered humiliation. But now, he was the outside special envoy, a ruler-level peerless expert. He could tell that the monkey was only at the diviner level. However, there seemed to be some sort of power inside him that hadn't been fully developed yet. If he could fully develop that power, his realm would definitely rise along with it. When that happened, even Yang Jian wasn't sure if he could still bully the monkey. He'd angered the great sage so much just now because he wanted to take advantage of the monkey's low cultivation to bully him. Unfortunately, Yi Zichen blocked his path. Son, can't beat him? The great sage pointed a thumb at his own chest, then looked at Yang Jian disdainfully. You think I can't beat 10 people like him? The two of them had fought for most of their lives. Yi Zichen had no idea how to console them. All he could do was smile bitterly and nod. At that moment, Yang Jian didn't want to bully the great sage any longer. If they were going to fight, it would only be interesting if their cultivation levels weren't too far apart. In Yang Jian's eyes, this sort of direct suppression wasn't particularly glorious. He decided not to bully the great sage, but he could still put on an act in front of him. Wild monkey, don't be unconvinced. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. See just how strong your grandpa Yang Jian is. Boom. He opened his third eye. The instant he did, his aura skyrocketed to its peak. Waves of divine power gushed out of him, making it impossible to face him directly. The great sage frowned. A ruler. After learning of Yang Jian's cultivation, the great sage's face alternated between green and white. He'd never have guessed that Yang Jian, whom he'd always bullied, would become a ruler after 100 years. If I hadn't slept at Master's place for 100 years, I'd definitely be a ruler as well. I'd definitely be stronger than this grandson, the great sage muttered to himself. The aura of a sovereign was overwhelming, and all the cultivators near the house subconsciously looked over. The ladies of the Xiao family, who had been teased by Yang Jian before, also had their beautiful eyes sparkling and their small mouths slightly open. This stinking hooligan is a ruler? The young ladies who were being teased whispered to themselves. This was definitely a world where the strong were respected. The young ladies who had thought that Yang Jian was frivolous had a completely different impression of him when they saw that he had reached the sovereign realm. Many young ladies were thinking about how to ease the awkwardness from before and get to know each other again. Xiao Yan, who was chatting with Xiao Hu, stopped as well. He sensed the oppressive aura Yang Jian emanated, and a dark look flashed through his eyes. Yang Jian wanted to put on an act in front of the monkey. As long as he could make the monkey realize the difference between them, it would be enough. There was no need for him to maintain his sovereign's aura for too long. Under Yang Jian's control, the surging aura returned to his body. At this moment, he snorted with his eyebrows furrowed. Are you afraid now? The way he placed his hands on his waist could be said to be quite infuriating. Although he didn't want to admit it, the great sage had to admit that he was no match for Yang Jian. However, his cultivation was lower than his opponent's, so he absolutely couldn't back down. In the face of Yang Jian's arrogance, the great sage simply curled his lips disdainfully. That's all you've got. I'm only letting you off for my bro's sake. Otherwise, even if you're a ruler, I'd still smash your head in. Yang Jian's smug expression instantly froze. Then, they watched as he furiously pointed at the great sage and cursed. Come, come, come. Try smashing me to death. Bro, don't stop him. Hurry up and let him do it. Tch. The great sage curled his lips disdainfully. His eyes seemed to say, I can't be bothered with you. Stop messing around, you two. These two brothers were clearly gay friends, and their relationship was better than anyone else's. Yet, as soon as they saw each other, they started fighting. It was hard to deal with them. He repeatedly tried to pacify them, but they still looked as if they didn't want to see each other. Until… fine. Hey, keep pretending then. I was just going to have a nice chat with my brother the Supreme Treasure about that Violet. I forgot what her name was. It doesn't matter. In any case, my brother probably doesn't want to know. Yang Jian grinned and looked away. Let's go. The great sage's disdainful expression instantly froze. Yi Zichen glanced over as well. He knew about the love and hate between the Supreme Treasure and Fairy Zixia. Yang Jian's words were aimed squarely at the great sage's weak spot. The great sage's gaze flickered back and forth. With a whoosh, he reappeared beside Yang Jian. What? Yang Jian looked up at the great sage through his nostrils. Heh. The great sage rubbed his hands together and laughed obsequiously. Bro, it's been so long. I've missed you. The Ripple House is my treat. How about it? The Ripple House was one of Skyspan City's most famous restaurants. Their dishes were top-notch, but their prices were also ridiculously high. Even an ordinary celestial being would find it hard to afford a meal in the Ripple House. This was especially true of Yang Jian's appetite. Before he'd reached the heavenly court, he could eat 3 buckets of rice on his own. The great sage had invited Yang Jian to the Ripple House. It was obvious he'd gone all out. The Ripple House? Yang Jian arched his brows. He'd heard of the Ripple House's reputation and knew how extravagant it was. However, Yang Jian didn't care too much. He enjoyed teasing the monkey. Wait, what did you just call me? Bro. Then, Master Yang? Asked the great sage tentatively. Yang Jian nodded and smiled. That's more like it. When he saw Yang Jian's smug expression, the great sage was beyond annoyed. He had no choice. He had to get news of Fairy Zixia as well. As soon as Yang Jian mentioned the supreme treasure, the great sage sensed he knew about Zixia. That's why he'd sent Yang Jian so many private messages, only to receive no reply. Little did he know, this only made the great sage more and more certain that Yang Jian knew. Just now, he'd been so angry at Yang Jian, most likely because Yang Jian had ignored him. That was why he'd acted this way. He'd promised Zixia that he'd come to the realm of gods, demons, and demons to find her. But now, he still hadn't received any news of her. He was in a rush. Thinking back, it might have been thousands, tens of thousands of years since they'd parted. He couldn't remember. But he did know that he missed her too much. He also knew that Zixia was definitely still waiting for him. He was very impatient. Forget about inviting Yang Jian to the Ripple House for a drink. Even if Yang Jian wanted to beat him up, the great sage wouldn't bat an eye. Chapter 1356. Go find Zixia. Zichen couldn't help but shake his head and smile wryly. From the great sage's fawning expression, it was clear that Yang Jian had grasped the great sage's weak spot. Normally, he'd never seen the great sage like this. Yang Jian couldn't even close his mouth when he heard Lord Yang. Even worse, he patted the great sage's head. Not bad, not bad. Monkey, you're quite good at pretending to be a grandson. Little did he know, the great sage was already at his limit. Then, Yang Jian patted his head and said something like that. The great sage instantly summoned the Rui Jingu Bang and knocked Yang Jian to the ground. Then, the Rui Jingu Bang was pressed against his crotch. If the great sage wished it, Yang Jian would probably have to say goodbye to him for the rest of his life. Little monkey, is this how you should treat your Lord Yang? Yang Jian didn't seem to understand the situation. He raised his nose in the air. Hurry up and help me up, or else. Chem? Before he finished, Yang Jian felt something wrong with his lower body. He straightened his neck and looked, then his eyes widened. Bro, don't be rash. The Rui Jingu Bang was pressed against Yang Jian's lower body. Even if Yang Jian wanted to run, he couldn't. The great sage could definitely push the rod down the instant Yang Jian moved. When that happened, he'd lose everything. Yang Jian was well aware of this, so he didn't dare to argue with the great sage anymore. He grinned. Bro, look at you. What are you doing? I was just joking with you earlier. Hurry up and let me up. It's cold down here. I'm going to catch a cold. As a bro, don't you feel bad for me? The great sage still didn't say anything. He merely glanced at Yang Jian. Immediately, Yang Jian, who was lying on the ground, felt the pressure on his lower body increase dramatically. All right, hurry up and let me up. I'll tell you. Between acting like an egg and the real egg, Yang Jian chose the latter. The great sage with the Jingu Bang was still a little suspicious. Yang Jian raised 3 fingers above his head and swore an oath. Only then did the great sage put away the Rui Jingu Bang and pull him up from the ground. You damned monkey, you're really sneaky. Yang Jian cursed and rolled his eyes. Hurry up and say it. The great sage couldn't waste another second. He wanted to get to Zixia Fairy's side as fast as he could and say something to her. "I'm coming." Yang Jian, who had threatened the great sage with the word egg, was a little indignant. He glared at the great sage unhappily. "Bro, are you coming?" Yang Jian asked Yi Zichen. Of course he had to ask. On this trip to the Divine Mountains, his primary mission was to ensure Yi Zichen's safety. He needed to be by her side at all times to protect her so that she would not be threatened. He asked this in order to protect Yi Zichen while taking the monkey to Zixia. Should I go or not? Yi Zichen actually wanted to go. He mainly wanted to go and see if Zixia Fairy was really as gentle and infatuated as portrayed in the movies. He also wanted to support his brother, the great sage. According to Yang Jian, when Zixia Fairy left, it was her family who brought her back. She didn't like the great sage very much. As a brother, he should go and support him. However, he had other things to take care of. He had to go to the Central Divine Mountain for the Battle of Geniuses, and he had to deal with the pressure on the Shao family. "I can't go right now. I have to go to the Central Divine Mountain and take care of some business. Furthermore, the great sage seems to be in a hurry. How about this? You go with him and send me your address. Once I'm done with my business, I'll go find you." "Will that work?" Yang Jian knit his brows. "You're not as safe as you think. If I'm not there, what will you do? If someone finds you while I'm gone and steals your..." "Give me the address. I'll go by myself," said the great sage. "Have Yang Jian go with you," said Yi Zichen. "Have you forgotten how Zixia Fairy left all those years ago? The way I see it, her family isn't small. If you were a ruler, that would be one thing, but you're just a diviner. Have Yang Jian go with you. For better or for worse, he's a ruler, and a special envoy from the outside. He'll be able to back you up." With that, Yi Zichen turned to Yang Jian and said, "Don't worry, just go with the great sage. Even if you're not there, there's still those 20 rulers, and Pu Jingwan is there too. There's nothing to worry about." Yang Jian wanted to say more, but Yi Zichen slapped him in the face. "Then it's settled. Go with the great sage and give me the address. When I'm done, I'll go find you." Although Yang Jian was teasing the great sage, deep down, he wanted to take the great sage with him. Zixia had been a thorn in the monkey's heart for tens of thousands of years. As his brother, he had to help him no matter what. Otherwise, why would he go looking for Zixia for no reason? It was all because of the monkey. Now that Yi Zichen said this, after some hesitation, Yang Jian agreed. Yang Jian took his phone out of his pocket, sent Yi Zichen a picture, and drew a purple circle on it. When he saw the map, Yi Zichen was stunned. The Yao realm. So Fairy Zixia was a Yao? Yi Zichen silently put his phone back in his pocket, then nodded. "I got the address. You can head out now." Then the Rippling House. "When you come back, son, will treat you." The great sage rolled his eyes. Right now, all he wanted to do was go see Fairy Zixia. Nothing else mattered. "You said it." Yang Jian slapped his thigh, then pointed at the crowd. Everyone heard that. "The monkey said he's going to invite me to the Rippling House. Hurry up and go." The great sage urged him on, so Yang Jian didn't dawdle. He grabbed the great sage by the shoulder, transformed into a beam of light, and disappeared from sight. Xiao Yumei, who'd come with Yi Zichen, couldn't help but say, "Fairy Zixia really does exist? I thought she was just a myth. This is really strange. Why do all the people we see on TV really exist?" "I know," said Yi Zichen. He seemed to be answering, but he also seemed to be sighing. Xiao Yumei recalled what Yi Zichen had just said to the great sage and Yang Jian. "Are you going to leave too?" Yi Zichen nodded, then said, "I have to. Neither Shao Ting nor the Battle of Geniuses gave me time to waste. It just so happens that Yang Jian and the others have left, so I'll leave as well." Xiao Yumei's expression darkened. The two of them hadn't even been together for 6 hours. However, ever since the modern realm began, she'd always been the considerate type. After 100 years of tempering, she knew better than anyone else what to do. Chapter 1357. Heavenly God City under guard. Heavenly God City. As the capital of the God realm, Heavenly God City had always been bustling with activity. It was one of the most populated cities in the world. However, ever since the Battle of Geniuses began, the city had become somewhat deserted. Even though the streets were still packed with people, and many foreign experts had come to visit, the entire city wasn't as bustling as before. However, the entire capital city was not as bustling as before. In comparison, there was a somewhat dull aura that enveloped the entire city. It seems the situation isn't as optimistic as I thought. Yi Zichen had just arrived through Skyspan City's spatial transfer formation. Although Heavenly God City hadn't suffered as much of a disaster as he'd imagined, he wasn't particularly optimistic either. Everywhere he looked, he could see soldiers clad in battle armor. They carried their weapons and vigilantly patrolled the city. From the streets to the skies, there were guards everywhere. That wasn't all. As soon as he emerged from the transfer formation, he sensed several auras at least at the diviner level. It was as if they were trying to spy on him, but as soon as they got close, Pu Jingwan blocked them. The people here really aren't polite. Pu Jingwan furrowed her brows in annoyance. Spying on others with their auras was like stripping them naked for everyone to see. It wasn't as simple as prying on someone's privacy. Pu Jingwan frowned and crossed her arms. Before she'd even finished speaking, she saw a squad of guards approach. Judging from their aggressive demeanor, they were most likely here for the two of them. Wait a moment. The person who spoke to Yi Zichen and company was a man who was armed to the teeth. From his eyes, Yi Zichen could tell that he was definitely not young. Of course, no cultivator on the Divine Mountains was too young. Most importantly, this man wasn't one of the younger generation. Judging from his tone, he was fairly polite. He reached out and stopped Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan, who were just about to leave. Please show me your identification. The guard already extended his hand. Yi Zichen casually took out his crystal card. And this one? The guard captain pointed at Pu Jingwan. This put Yi Zichen in a difficult position. Only people from the Divine Mountains possessed identification cards. Pu Jingwan was an outsider, so how could she possibly have one? We came from Skyspan City. She left her crystal card at home, explained Yi Zichen. Then I'm sorry, your friend will have to follow us. Following the captain's words, his team members had already surrounded him. You can't possibly not tell that we're both gods, can you? Yi Zichen knit his brows. If you don't have a crystal card, you won't be able to identify us. Little brother, it's best if you don't care. We are just following orders. If your friend really left her crystal card in Heaven Connect City, we naturally have a way to prove her innocence. If she's not, we also have your identity information here. When the time comes, you might need to stay with us for a while, the guard captain said. So harsh? A solemn expression flashed across Yi Zichen's face. It was obvious that the relationship between the god race, the Yao race, and the demon race had undergone some subtle changes. Otherwise, the divine race would not be so paranoid. Especially since Pu Jingwan's aura clearly belonged to the god race. You suspect my friend of being a demon? Asked Yi Zichen. I wouldn't call it a suspicion, but I can't deny it either. Your friend doesn't have an identity crystal card that belongs to the god race. You should be clear about this. If you want to prove your friend's identity, you'd best come with us, said the guard captain kindly. Then why are the Yaoan demons allowed to roam the city as they please? My friend simply doesn't have a crystal card, yet you're targeting her like this. If she doesn't have a crystal card, just treat her as a Yao or demon, said Yi Zichen. Are you sure? The guard captain's tone suddenly slowed. As soon as he spoke, both Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan sensed his aura change dramatically. If he had explained it in a friendly manner before, Then his words were a little sharper after he finished speaking. If you're trying to say your friend is a Yao or demon, can you explain to us why she's pretending to be a god, and why you're covering for her, saying she left her crystal card in Skyspan City? What are you trying to do? Suddenly, Yi Zichen recalled the demons they'd encountered who could hide their auras. Back then, they'd sent their corpses to Skyspan Academy. Could it be that the gods had made some progress? Was that why they were so cautious? She didn't have a crystal card, yet she was pretending to be a god? Yi Zichen couldn't help but curse himself for saying the wrong thing. He'd almost forgotten that demons could disguise their auras. After what he'd just said, there was no way he could clear his name. If he tried to explain, he might just make things worse. Originally, he just wanted to cooperate with the guards and not mention his identity. But now it seemed he had no choice. Don't overthink things. My friend is absolutely not a Yao or demon. I was just saying it casually, said Yi Zichen. The captain of the guards looked at him calmly. Yi Zichen took a deep breath. There's no way I'm like what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. You're the one imagining things. What I'm doing right now is just our job. If you have a crystal card, you can pass. Demons and Yao have their own places to separate you. If you don't have a crystal card, you'll have to come with us, said the captain meticulously. All right, I was overthinking things. Yi Zichen smiled apologetically, then shrugged. But to tell the truth, there's really no need. Don't you know who I am? I'm sorry, but no matter who you are, your friend doesn't have a crystal card. She'll have to come with us and undergo an inspection. With that, the captain didn't waste any more words with Yi Zichen. He glanced at his subordinates, and they all attacked Pu Jingwan. Sky Supremes. The guards were all peak Sky Supremes at the very least. With a diviner as their captain, they could be considered a fairly strong squad. But their opponent was Pu Jingwan, someone who ordinary rulers couldn't last more than 10 rounds against. Chapter 1358. A single punch she attacked. The Sky Supreme guards fell to the ground and coughed up mouthfuls of blood. In truth, Pu Jingwan had held back. She could feel the hostility of these people towards her, but in her eyes it would be difficult for these people to harm her life. She simply didn't want these people to touch her, so she used a wave of qi to repel them. If she'd really gotten angry, never mind the Sky Supremes. Even the leader of the celestial beings would have probably died by now. From start to finish, Pu Jingwan hadn't said a single word. The diviner-level captain, who'd been forced back several steps by the blast of air, had a solemn expression on his face. He sensed an indescribable pressure emanating from Pu Jingwan. I knew you were up to no good. At that moment, a wild, arrogant laugh came from the skies above the city. Looking up, one could see that the sky above Heavenly God City was filled with a layer of pitch-black clouds. An old man stood in the middle of the clouds, his hair dancing in the wind. Your Excellency! The diviner-level captain bowed deeply. He was the one who'd instigated the guards to attack Yi Zichen and the others. After the old man appeared, Pu Jingwan sensed his aura. When they'd first arrived, she'd sensed that he was one of the few who'd tried to spy on them. Only now did Pu Jingwan's expression reveal a hint of displeasure. When she faced these diviners and Sky Supreme guards, they weren't even on the same level. She didn't care about them at all, or rather, didn't care about them at all. Pu Jingwan was indifferent to their actions. Even when she'd attacked them, she'd seemed disdainful. The old man in the sky was different. Based on his aura, she could tell he was a ruler. Furthermore, Pu Jingwan didn't like it when others used their auras to spy on her. That was you just now, wasn't it? This wasn't just displeasure. Pu Jingwan's tone carried a hint of threat and interrogation. She slowly clenched her fists, and the crackling sounds of her bones could be heard from her clenched fists. Yi Zichen slowly retreated to the side. He didn't stop Zhou Wu. There was no way he'd ever get along with Zhou Wu. The ruler in front of him was most likely one of Zhou Wu's people. Since Pu Jingwan wanted to deal with him, he would let her do it. Now, Yi Zichen felt a bit of pity for the ruler. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Pu Jingwan. Hee, that's me. It seemed the old man knew what Pu Jingwan was talking about. He snorted, "You cut off my aura, so I knew there was something up with you." Now that he could not produce his crystal card and had beaten up a city guard, he was even more guilty. "Little girl, you should obediently follow this old man back to accept the investigation." The old man on the black cloud had a savage smile on his face. Pu Jingwan also grinned. She flexed her right wrist with her left hand, and then her eyes narrowed. "Since it's you, that's great." Boom. He punched. A beam of golden light condensed into a single line, and the fist smashed into the old man's face. Pu Jingwan's punch sent the old man crashing into the ground, leaving behind a human-shaped crater. It was impossible to tell if he was dead or alive. One punch, instant kill. Although Yi Zichen knew Pu Jingwan was fierce, he hadn't expected her to be this strong. Yi Zichen gulped, then craned his neck and looked into the crater. The old man, who'd been beaten into a pit by Pu Jingwan, hadn't reacted in the slightest. He hadn't even twitched. "Perverted old man. You want to grab my breasts? Why don't you take a look at your wrinkled face? Even if I were single for tens of thousands of years, I still wouldn't let someone like you touch my holy land." Pu Jingwan muttered as she flexed her wrist. When he heard that, Yi Zichen almost tripped over. He snuck up to her and nudged her with his shoulder. "That old man isn't dead, is he?" Pu Jingwan glanced at the old man in the crater. "Who knows? It's better if he's dead. Just think of it as ridding the world of evil." The people on the streets were dumbfounded. If they weren't mistaken, that old man was the ancestor of the Wang family, one of the God Emperor's 8 aristocratic families. He'd been a ruler-level expert for thousands of years. 90% of the Wang family's status as one of the 8 aristocratic families was due to this old man. But one punch, instant kill. The onlookers didn't even dare imagine what kind of person could kill a ruler with a single punch. Could it be that the Wang family's ancestor had entered a period of decline? Was he no longer a ruler-level expert? "You really are infuriating." Pu Jingwan was still cursing him with her hands on her hip. When she recalled how the old man had tried to probe her aura, and how he'd tried to grab her breasts, Pu Jingwan was infuriated. This wasn't the first era, and this wasn't her territory. If this were her territory, she'd definitely find a few men to let this old pervert enjoy the feeling of being loved. After calming down a bit, Pu Jingwan asked Yi Zichen, "Don't worry. It won't bring you any trouble, will it? Beating up Zhou Wu's ruler in his territory would definitely bring him some trouble." However, he wouldn't blame Pu Jingwan for this. After all, when she'd attacked, he hadn't done anything to stop her. In other words, he supported Pu Jingwan's decision. Yi Zichen shook his head and chuckled, then pulled a transmission jade slip from his pocket. A short while later, Xianji hurried over from within the city. When the city guards saw Xianji, they all greeted her respectfully. Earlier, they hadn't known how to resolve the situation at hand and had been thinking of going to the God Emperor's estate to find her. Now that Xianji was here, there was no need for them to worry. "Your Highness," the guards assumed she'd come to resolve the matter, but before they could say anything, she ignored them and flew straight to Yi Zichen's side. As she landed, she looked Pu Jingwan up and down, then arched her brows. "Kid, you're really lucky with women. Every time, the girls standing next to me are all the same, and they're all so pretty." "Auntie, don't mess around," said Yi Zichen with a bitter smile. Yi Zichen smiled wryly. When the guards heard that, they were all dumbfounded. "Auntie?" Suddenly, they recalled the young man with an astonishing background who'd appeared in the city. Lady Xianji had called herself his auntie, and said his mother was the Lord of 7 Stars of the Saint Palace. Could it be? While everyone was still in shock, Xianji nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad. So you've learned to call her auntie. Furthermore, you've just arrived in Heavenly God City, and you've already greeted me. You. At that moment, out of the corner of her eye, Xian-ji noticed an old man lying in a nearby pit. She glanced at the onlookers' expressions and Yi Zichen's embarrassed smile. She narrowed her eyes, then hooked her finger at the man in the pit. The old man, who had been embedded in the ground, floated up. When he came out of the ground, his face had already changed beyond recognition. Xian-ji stared at him for a long time. When she saw a jade pendant hanging from his waist, she froze, then looked away. Kid, you. Xian-ji dragged out her last syllable. Yi Zichen rubbed his hands together and giggled foolishly, then dragged out his last syllable like a spoiled child.